What is up, humans and mutants alike? My name is Kyle. We are going back through our old catalog and re-uploading them onto YouTube in what we are calling Podcast of X Classics. So, enjoy.
We don't have much time. Let's get started on it. So, X-Men Dark Phoenix.
Going straight to the kick. All right. Right there. Straight to the I guess the penultimate of disappointment. No.
You call it the penultimate in preparation?
Yeah.
Well, Kinberg gets one more chance at New Mutants. That's his last hurrah. I mean, he is producing it. He's not writing it. He's got less of a hand on, but still, he's still there in the background.
He's still there in the background, lurking, touching your X-Men properties, people. Welcome back. This is Podcast of X, and the end is near. Not of life or the universe, but of the year 2019. And in honor of the closing out of this decade, we are going to talk about the last 10 years of X-Men. And today we're going to start with movies.
You're always sorry, Charles, and there's always a speech. But nobody cares anymore.
Are you excited? I'm a little hesitant.
The movies and the TV shows and things like that are what really got me into X-Men. Like, really, well, I guess I could say the animated series originally, and then the movies got me revitalized.
Oh, yeah.
By the time the first movie came out, we were still fans of X-Men, but that kind of fandom had dwindled, obviously, over the last decade, up into the point when the movie came out. And it was like the spark that reignited like the fandom inside me was when the first X-Men movie came out. And I was just like, all right, I want to get back into this. And then they brought back, like, they did like Evolution, I think, came out. And
right around the same time.
Yeah, and then like Grant Morrison started like getting involved with writing like the comics. So like the X-Men started a big resurgence, just not only on the big screen, but on paper as well.
Sure. And yeah, I remember the first movies that came out. I was like, yes, finally X-Men on the screen. We get to see them. Even though there was a lot of flaws, I really enjoyed it. And similar to you, I was very reinvigorated in X-Men. And I got my hopes up at the time. Hopes for good X-Men, comics and movies alike. And that was... at least on the movie side, somewhat disappointing. And I guess on the comic side too, we'll find out later. But movies. We're talking movies today. So what is your just overall impression of the movies, if you had to sum them up? All of the Fox X-Men movies.
Oh, geez, the whole line of Fox X-Men movies.
One collective franchise, baby. Judge this baby.
With good and bad all put together, if I had to sum it up as simple as I could, I would say it was a nice try. That's what I'd sum it up as. It was a nice try. Some of these movies landed. Some of them landed really well. Like, for example, the earlier ones, I enjoyed. X-Men 1 and 2, I really liked. Sure. X1, when Wolverine did that little, like, flip you off with the middle claw and everything, like, that's like, that's something that's just perfect and iconic to the X-Men movie verse itself. Like, the comics never really touched on stuff like that.
No.
Like that kind of crude humor. And I enjoyed that. And I as it went on, it lost that joy, and you got to things like X-Men Last Stand and Origins and all that, and it just it kind of snowballed from there. But when you look at the turn of the century, excuse me, you see a big change in like how the X-Men are handled and how Fox approaches them. They bring in a bigger cast of stars, a more contemporary cast of stars, and then they try to push forward with a new idea that kind of worked. It started to lose it at the end there, but it kind of brought back the feeling that you got a decade prior when the first original X-Men launched. So, like I said, long story short, it was overall a good try, but didn't quite stick the landing.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. I call it a genetic garbage fire, a mutant genetic garbage fire, if you will. Um,
Senator
yeah,
Kelly in the first X-Men movie is what you're talking about.
yeah, man.
It just
Uh,
got bloated and then collapsed on itself.
Ultimately, it was just I got hyped originally. The first two, like you said, awesome. I enjoyed the ride. It was whatever. Like in
Especially for
retrospect,
our
I'm always
age. That
yeah,
was perfect for our
yeah,
age.
sure,
Yeah.
definitely. When was that first movie too? 2000, right? So
Yeah. Turn of the last decade.
yeah, so yeah, I enjoyed those movies, but ultimately, the entire series just kind of felt like an afterthought, more or less. And we're gonna dissect as this last decade has went. We're gonna dissect and find out why. Maybe not why, but we're gonna find out at least some culprits involved and possibly ponder why they would make such decisions. Um, but
We're gonna deep dive into
we
the
can do that.
last 10 years of weird up and down X-Men movies. This last 10 years literally features the best and the worst X-Men movie.
Sure, sure.
It's a weird timeline.
It's weird. So let's get into it. Starting in 2011, the series after it took a dump with both Last Stand and X Men Origins Wolverine, we get a full on, or what we would think would be a reboot in X Men First Class. Um, this movie's written by Ashley Miller, Zach Stentz, Jane Goldman, and Matthew Vaughn, and directed by Matthew Vaughn. I'm a big Matthew Vaughn fan. Um, I enjoyed The Kingsman. I never watched
Oh
Larry.
yeah. Kingsman was good. You're right. I really did enjoy that one as well. I can say I had a lot of hope for Matthew Vaughn
Yeah,
and
he
what
also
and what
did
he started out doing with the First Class and later projects with Kingsman. But what has he done recently?
recently.
Yeah, I can't
He
think of anything.
has been like
Is he working on
as a director. He's doing The
the
Kingsman,
new
like
one, right?
the prequel. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He's produced a lot of stuff though.
Oh,
Let's see. He's currently producing like a Flash Gordon right now.
oh, he's working on that.
So
Okay.
he's got his hands in a lot of things. He produced Kick Ass and Kick Ass 2.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Writing, he's done yeah, pretty much Kingsman. I guess he
Okay.
wrote the
Yeah.
screenplay for Kick Ass
See,
and
I,
First
I don't really have
Class.
any problems against him. Matthew Vaughn overall, like he's a pretty
Yeah,
good director. But I mean, you look on that list of producers and you see
he
Bryan
started as a
Singer.
producer. He started as what's his name's producer. I can't think of his name. The director of Snatch.
Snatch. Oh, I know the type of movies and the director you're talking about, but I can't remember
Sherlock
his name. Yeah.
Holmes, he did that
Yeah.
too. I think he also directed the new Aladdin. Um,
Hmm.
what is it? But he was his producer for the longest of time, and then he
Oh,
started
okay.
directing. Yeah,
Oh, so it's one of those things where it's like the lineage kind of shifted him in over time.
yeah.
All right. But I mean, look at that producing list though. Do you see who's on there with Bryan Singer right there on the actual like producers, like the people who were tied to actually having production? Simon Kinberg.
Good old Simon Kinberg.
It's the
There's a,
beginning.
there's a lot of
This is
producers.
There's a lot of producers, but this is the beginning of what I like to note as the end of
Sure,
bad things to come.
it's
How this
just
man is still a part of X-Men at this point. We're it I mean the tragedy of Last Stand was only a few years prior to this and it's still there. Like not enough time had passed. I feel people were
mm-mm.
still pretty gripey about it. Yet that guy still got work tied to X-Men properties even here when they're trying to reboot. And I assume if you're trying to reboot a franchise that bottomed up so bad, I would try to edge out some of the people who were involved with the last, flop. Because Singer wasn't involved with the Last Stand. He went on to go nosedive a Superman movie, so we got a bad X-Men and Superman movie that year.
Mhm.
It's a good year. It's a good year for comic property.
Oh
So, jeez. But
God,
yeah, it's an interesting rogues gallery of people that are coming together to make us this like new soft. I guess you could say it's a soft reboot almost,
it's a
because
soft
it's
reboot. It was supposed to be a hard reboot, but they kind of backtracked.
yeah, yeah. It had like a very much like Secret Wars style backtrack of like no, everything's still there. Nothing really changed. It's just we're looking at it from a different perspective.
And they
Yeah.
even messed that up, which we'll talk about later. But going back to X-Men First Class, overall, we're introduced to the characters once again, set in the 60s during the Cold War. We got James McAvoy as Xavier. We got Fassbender as Magneto.
Great
What
choice.
did you? Yeah, what did you think overall of this movie for the most part?
I really liked it. The weird contrast to history is always enjoyable to me in comics when they can do kind of like a historical dramatization. And I was really interested in the way they portrayed like how the Cold War was ramping up between the United States and Russia, and specifically things outside of Cuba with the missile crisis and
Sure.
how that all tied in. Like that was a cool contrast. But then some of it was a little confusing because then they tried to allude that Magneto killed Kennedy, but he was trying to supposedly save him.
Yeah.
And it's like it got kind of murky and confusing, and I was just like, okay, this is weird. And they're like, Kennedy was a mutant too, and it's like, well, what's this mutant power? And it's like, no, we're not touching any of that. And I'm like, don't do that. Like, don't bring up weird, cool stuff that you want to know about and then not feed me on it. Like, you just leave me wanting more, and then my expectations never get met because some of the weird like historical concepts are kind of muted in the background, and the bigger world that the X-Men are playing isn't really seen. Not as much as you like in Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past works a lot direct to the time, a lot more direct to the timeline. Whereas like the only real big moment where the mutants are involved and things that like you can see play out is the actual part with the missile crisis towards the end of the film. But overall, I still liked the movie and the way it played in the backdrop. I liked the characters that they kind of went with. It was very unique, first class. It kind of annoyed me that it wasn't the original X-Men, and who knows if we'll ever get the original X-Men lineup in a movie. Maybe Marvel can do it, maybe they won't, but this group that they went with, the actors aside, which were all great, McAvoy was great and everything, Fassbender pretty much as well, and especially when they started balding him, I thought that was going to be weird. I was like, bald James McAvoy, I don't know if that'll work, but he has the look. He has the look. He
It
pulls it
worked.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they had a weird, and this was the beginning of like weird uses of Maura McTaggart. Like she was a CIA operative.
Yeah, she was a CIA agent.
Yeah, and I'm like, you're not even really American. You're supposed to be, you know, a Scottish research, scientist in Scotland.
Yeah, you're supposed to be like, I shouldn't be able to understand what's coming out of your mouth.
At
That's
least let
how
your bits in
Scottish
it.
you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting turn for the movie, and I guess maybe this was the influence that Hickman got. And later on, was like, you know what? Let's do some radical shit with Moira. This was like the first Stone cast, and that was a weird part. And then my biggest gripe with this whole series is Jennifer Lawrence, like because they cast her as Mystique
Oh, yes.
and she rose in prominence as an actress. They elevated Mystique's role, but it was in such an unorganic way. Like her character was just dumb, like mutant and proud. God damn it!
So
Uh,
I hate Jennifer Lawrence so much, and it's disappointing that she kind of assisted in not helping this franchise in a positive light, at least. Um, and
yeah, she
then
definitely casted shade everywhere she went when it came to like talking about the movies, and she seemed bitter about it. And then she didn't even want to do like the makeup in the end. Like they're constantly like CGing her, or they're just
oh
doing it
no,
for the face
yeah,
up and stuff. Yeah, it was weird.
yeah. What did you think of Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw?
I actually like that. A lot of people didn't like that. I enjoy Kevin. and his bacon. I enjoy him quite well.
You do all the bacon? You like it?
All
You
the
like it?
bacon.
Yeah.
I do. I'm all about that. You know, a little bit of Footloose here and there. it's it was weird seeing him be portrayed as like the German, like being like a part of that Nazi concentration camp and like doing research on trying to find mutants and things
Right.
like that. How they tied him into Magneto storyline. Very
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah.
Very strange. And making him older than Magneto as well, and just I mean, his powers were kind of funny too, and how they want a really unique way of visually showing it, but it was still kind of strange. I enjoyed Kevin Bacon. I didn't like him playing Sebastian Shaw. I thought maybe they could have used him for someone different. I can't really say off top of my head, but I feel like Sebastian Shaw was a weird character to even go with. If you're gonna do Sebastian Shaw, do him in like he should have been like in Dark Phoenix in the Hellfire Club. Like that's how we should get our introductory to Shaw through the
Yeah.
Hellfire Club. This whole Kevin Bacon being a weird Nazi scientist at playing Sebastian Shaw felt so out of place. None of it added
Exactly.
up. Yeah, so it was a misuse. It was a misuse. But I mean, look at how they used the role. Like, I mean, Beast is the only classic X-Men character that they
Yep.
put into it. I mean, sure, Havoc comes along not too long after Beast is introduced, but still, Havoc over you want Alex over Scott? What a weird choice. Like, I don't understand. And then you have Azazel in the movie, which is Nightcrawler's father, but no Nightcrawler. And the strangest one of all, but I was so jazzed he was in it. They used him terribly, but Darwin was in it, and that's like Ed Brubaker wrote him
Right.
in Deadly Genesis, and that's when I started to get back into the X-Men again later in the later 2000s when
That
Deadly
was
Genesis came out was dope.
Yeah, sure. That was
The-
such a weird moment in his and then where he died in that movie where you're like his mutant powers to adapt to anything. Why can't he adapt to this? Why does he die? And then it's so stupid.
yeah,
It's so like uncharacteristic.
yeah, I felt like they had to force tension. They wanted to build up emotion, so
Yeah,
they're
it
like,
was definitely forced tension for sure.
yeah, let's kill off the character that fits the role as like kind of like the innocent young guy of the team, like the bright-eyed, optimistic dude. And then then now we can move forward because we have this momentum of sadness. It's like, yeah, but you didn't do it organically like a good movie would. Like, what are you doing? Or at least a great movie would, because I still feel like First Class was a good movie. It just wasn't a great movie.
It was
I
good. It
mean,
was all right.
I
It was
could,
enjoyable.
but it's walking the line. It's walking the line to good to like almost mediocre.
It was great in the sense that like from what we had X-Men wise before this, like it was god awful. And then we get this and you're just like, yeah, cool, I'm down. This is good enough. This is adequate. That's where the bar is set. It's set to just adequate at this point. And
Yeah.
you get this with Matthew Vaughn and X-Men First Class. So yeah, weird movie. It ends with obviously Magneto and Xavier splitting. Uh,
Xavier's paralyzed now. That's
Xavier's
also
paralyzed. He gets shot. Yeah, I
by
wrote a bullet.
yeah, like Moira is trying to shoot Magneto, the guy who can control magnetism. Like she knows it. She's been trying to do research on all of this and like follow it as a CIA operative, trying to study the mutants and understand this. She knows Magneto can control metal, yet she still shoots a gun at it like it's gonna work. The dude just stopped like 100 missiles, but she's like, "This gun,
Yeah,
it's closer, right?" And then he whips one of the bullets in Charles, paralyzing him. Like McAvoy's like, she's like, I can't feel my legs at the very end of the movie, and that's how it ends. She's like, I can't feel my legs, and it's like fade to black. I thought that one of the bigger crimes next to the underuse of Darwin, though, was the underuse of Emma Frost in this movie. Like, she got some
Oh,
time, but then didn't really get to shine, and gets killed off in like the background and gets noted in the next movie. Like they just at passing, they're like, oh yeah, Emma's dead.
she's
Like
just
what?
she was just walking boobs in this movie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's like she was kind of like Olivia Munn's character in Apocalypse. It was just
Yeah,
like, what's eye candy for the? And I'm like, come on, like there's too many trope characters in this, like her and Darwin. They just feel like tropey roles, and they're not
right.
actually being written out. And then and that weird choice to use Angel Salvador instead of actual Angel, I don't know. It's like
Oh yeah.
Do they want more of a diversity kind of angle where they're like, let's get like this ethnic female character and swap it in instead of this, white bread Warren Worthington? I guess I
What
could
was
see that, but still, they made her a
yeah,
villain
both both both
and a stripper. So,
both both Emma Frost and Angel.
I can't. That's
Those
it.
characters were hot. They're hot right now. Or at least Zoe Kravitz is hot right now.
Oh
Who
yeah, of course.
played Angel? She was also in Fantastic Beasts. She's been in a lot of things recently. Emma Frost also coming off that movie. She was in Mad Men, and she was like hot, very
Yeah,
hot at the moment.
she's in
So it's
that one
just
show,
like,
Last Man on Earth or whatever, with Will Forte.
okay.
Yeah, stars in that. So yeah, they,
Yeah,
they both went on to do some things, but yeah, this was before any of them really went on to anything. So they unfortunately weren't Jennifer Lawrence, and thus their roles did not get elevated.
no,
Jeez.
unfortunate. But yeah, it was a good movie. I enjoyed the reboot for the most part. Not great overall. Any last thoughts on X-Men First Class?
It was better than Origins and Last Stand, and that's not too hard.
There you go. It's not too hard.
I can tell you
Bar
that much.
set low, people. All right, moving on. We go to 2013, The Wolverine. This is the second in the solo Wolverine series.
I thought this was a prequel to Red Dawn, where it's about the Wolverine, not the Wolverines. Is that
Yes,
what?
right? Yes,
No, no.
Wolverines.
Wolverine, the Wolverine. It's just the one guy, or all the other Wolverines are dead, and
All the
he's
Wolverines are
afterwards. It's a
dead.
sequel.
It was surprisingly, it was what's his name?
Now, are we reviewing the 3D version of the Wolverine, or just?
Obviously.
I mean, they're two radically different. Oh man, this one was a weird movie. This one was the same like First Class. It was good, wasn't great. It was better. It made up for Origins in many ways because it tied in well to the other movies. This movie is a legit sequel to X-Men 2. This is the closest you have, or X3. Like this is the closest you have to a continuation in the original Bryan Singer X-Men timeline.
Yes.
So I was excited for it. I was jazzed, and I was like, all right, maybe this will be better. I saw some of the previews, and I was like, okay, this looks iffy, but all right. I mean, the origins look good, and they showed like a bunch of Gambit stuff, and you're like, oh, awesome. And then you go see the movie, and you're like, oh, you tricked me. It's not that much Gambit in this. He's like not even really relevant, except for that one part they shoehorn him in the end, and
Yeah,
you're like, Gambit, why are you even still here?
right.
Yeah, but it was one of those bittersweet moments where you were like, okay, this movie was good, but I mean, Origins was so bad that this movie just had to kind of walk a fine line of safety, and it was going to be fine. The way they handled Silver Samurai and a couple other like unique Wolverine mythos characters was kind of funny, but also it fit. It fit. Like the cyborg kind of Iron Man-esque Silver Samurai approach
Sure.
was cool. I mean, sure, we all wanted like the Marvel vs. Capcom Silver Samurai and his like
Course.
armor and doing like weird energy sword attacks, but the way they wrote the character and like his weapons and how he did that worked. It fit. My one big gripe is the part at the beginning where Wolverine like tanks a nuclear bomb.
Straight up, let's talk about that. Yeah, he survives nuclear radiation apparently pretty well. Takes it like a champ. Takes it like a champ. Ah, man.
So essentially, Silver Samurai is behind Wolverine, who is behind a car door, and the fire just stops at the car door and kind of like goes around it, like kind of like if you use a blowtorch on it. But this is like the nuclear fire, so it's like that doesn't even make sense.
No, it
like,
makes sense because it's movies, and that's how movie fires work. As long as you're like, you have it slightly blocked, you're good. You know.
But even if that was just the case where the fire was stopping, that level of radiation in that area would be enough to kill that dude. Like later on, like he still lived into like his like 60s or something, and he was like, the radiation's taking me finally. And I'm like, man, people died faster because of cigarettes, man. Like you were point blank at like a nuclear explosion in your face, and you still like didn't die from radiation until like 50 years later? Like, what the
Yeah,
fuck? 60? What?
not bad.
Okay,
Not
that's
bad. It
impressive.
seems like you won.
Yeah. Oh man, this movie had some cringy moments though. Remember when they were drilling out inside of like Wolverine's claws and like taking out his adamantium by drilling inside his like his bone cavity and shit?
Vaguely. There's moments in this
Oh,
movie where I am like, I feel like I've lost. Like maybe I wasn't paying attention completely. And I gave this movie 2 tries. I remember I fell asleep the first time, and the
uh-huh.
second time I watched it all the way through. So I have like a lucid moment of like some scenes of this movie. I feel like it comes in waves. Every time I'm like, yeah, yeah, I know the story, but then like I go back, I'm like, oh wait, that happened? Yeah, did that happen? Yes. Um, so this movie clearly did not capture my attention whatsoever, and you'd think that it would. It's like mutants in Japan. It's
Well,
like
dude,
my cup of
it's
tea.
based off Chris Claremont's
Chris
like
Claremont's run
Frank
too. Yeah,
Miller, like the story of the
those
Wolverine
ones
or
are good.
Wolverine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
so you
good
assume
one.
that okay, Wolverine
Michael.
ninjas, that should
Yeah.
be great. But they don't really deliver on that level of badassery, not like they do with Logan later on. Like they deliver on it, and you really appreciate who Wolverine is, and his story comes full circle. Because this is the setup. Like this is James Mangold's like actual first
Yeah.
foray into the his Logan duology that he's trying to build, and this is him setting up the story. And I feel like he had a lot of mythos that he had to build off of, like with the older movies and like how bad Origins was and all that other stuff. So he came with a lot of baggage, but he still set up
Mhm.
his universe surprisingly well enough. And they're separated far apart by many, many years. So when even not only do they come out at later parts of the decade, but they also in the storyline, they're way separated from each other. So I feel like he did an impressive job where most like directors can't even keep one movie together throughout like a whole trilogy. But like every movie's just so radically different and doesn't connect at all. I'm talking about you, Star Wars, but like this worked. Like I really thought it was a fun movie, and I enjoyed. I mean, some of the mutant characters were kind of weird. Like they had that one acid lady who I guess is an actual mutant, not an X-Men, but from the mythos. And it's like, who cares about that? And Jean Grey shows up, which is kind of a cool like nod to the older movies. And then they
Sure.
have that little post-credit scene where the cameo of his like was his orange mask, right?
His original
Orange and
outfit.
black.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that one, that really iconic Wolverine outfit.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. So that was nice, and overall it helped the movie feel like a better transition, like it getting back more towards the roots of like X2 and X1. So I appreciate it for that, but overall, yeah, it is a forgettable movie. It is definitely nothing that's gonna reinvent the wheel, and you could skip it and life wouldn't. I mean, Logan's a phenomenal movie, and you really don't have to watch this movie to set up Logan. You can just watch Logan and be fine, but this wouldn't hurt either way.
That fight scene on the bullet train, I'm just like, you can't. You're gonna fly off. You're gonna be like a fly on a like a on a car. You're just gonna go and be
Oh,
gone in the wind at
but
those speeds. And I'm just
but
like, what is going on right now?
the fight on top of that nuclear silo in Origins was so rough and so
Oh, that one was bad.
ridiculous,
Yeah.
so bad that this seemed tame to me. Like coming into this, I
Like that.
laughed. It was dumb. He like went forward in the air, and I'm like, well, maybe his adamantium just weighs so much, and he's just and Wolverine has a form of super strength. So maybe that was like his ability, like just all working in tandem, and that's how he could propel himself. But it was still weird. It's still weird seeing
So
him fly
weird.
forward.
This is
Ah,
yes.
uh,
Um. So yeah, it was a very lucid movie to me. I don't remember too much about it. Kind of a fart in the wind, if you will.
yes, very much so. Kind of a fart in you in, if you will. Put that on. Ah, good times. Good.
All right. Moving forward from there, we go to one of the better ones. We're gonna have a little bit of hope here. 2014, Days of Future Past. Bryan Singer makes his return to X-Men. We have our boy Simon Kinberg at the screenplay cred. And Matthew Vaughn has a story cred in this as well.
Which is surprising because he's involved. Kimberg is not only involved in the screenplay aspect, but he's involved in a little bit of producing as well. But I
Yeah,
feel like with this team, with like Singer at the helm, both producing and directing, you kind of get your more traditional X-Men movie. He's enforcing that story mythos, that kind of background that he's been setting up over the years. And I know a lot of people have like a lot of heat on Bryan Singer and all that other stuff, and it's a lot of people hate him and how he did the movies in general. But I feel like comparatively what we could have got with other people or like people like Christopher Nolan or anything like that, I feel the X-Men movies that he touched were much better than any of the ones that anyone else really helmed, except for maybe Logan.
yeah.
And I don't know if I count the Deadpool ones, but I know that like what was it? Who did Bruckheimer did 3 or whatever, or who did Last Stand when Bryan Singer left? Oh, I think of Batman. Jerry Bruckheimer did Batman, but
No, you're talking about the
X-Men
director,
last
the
like
director.
director. Yeah,
Oh,
when Singer
what's
when
his
Singer
name?
left,
Brett
I know
Ratner.
that's I think yeah, Brett Ratner. Yeah,
It's
Brett
Brett
Ratner.
Ratner.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, like God, imagine if he made like or if he directed all of these movies. Like it would be so much worse. So I'm thankful for what we got. And now that we're getting to Days of Future Past, this is like the culmination. Like this really truly is all of that like all of that hard work that Marvel did to set up like their mythos and their universes with the Avengers and all that stuff.
Mhm.
That's cool and all, but nothing like Days of Future Past cool. Like
Yeah.
the level they took with Avengers Infinity War with all the time travel nonsense, like that was done already with Days of Future Past. Like Days of Future Past pulled all the movies together with time travel nonsense and made it fit. I mean, shoot, even in the end of the Wolverine, there was that little end credit scene with Xavier and Magneto showing up. And it was
Right.
no, it wasn't McAvoy at that point. It was Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart still.
Yeah,
So like they
weird,
show up,
like de-aged Patrick Stewart.
and that's essentially that Wolverine is leading on into the future Wolverine who is in Days of Future Past, and that's tying that all together. So it was an impressive movie being taken on over many years, like gosh, 15 years now, because this movie came out 2014. Okay, so the
Yeah,
other movie
14
started like
years.
99. So yeah, like in like 15 years in the making, this movie came along and we got something really impressive. In my opinion, the best X-Men movie. Probably the best. Yeah, I would say the best because it covers
I would
like
agree.
it's right up there. Like Logan's up there and Deadpool are all up there with it, but still I'd say this is the best because it housekeeps all of the other it does housekeeping on all of the other X-Men movies that come before it and ties it up in a nice neat bow, which we could have ended on, but gotta make
And
more
they
money.
should have. They should have, at
And
least
they could have.
continuity wise.
Yep. Yeah. Should have just straight up been like, this is it, and then started a whole new just reboot the whole franchise from ground up.
Yeah.
Like boom.
But
Original four X-Men with Xavier's fifth and all that, and then just gone from there.
but no, we did not get that. But in this movie, we are in the future. Everything sucks. They send Wolverine back to the past to help change the future. And Kitty
Instead of
Pryde,
Kitty.
they
Yeah.
instead of Kitty going, they use Kitty to send Wolverine. What did you think about Kitty being the like weird? She has this secondary mutant power that is just created for this story.
So this is another example, like with Jennifer Lawrence, of like a character being elevated because of their fame, and Hugh Jackman is to X-Men as Robert Downey Jr. is to the Avengers. Like he's their star. Like he's their golden boy. I mean, Wolverine isn't even that tall, so he's pretty hairy and stout. Like
Right.
doesn't look anything like Hugh Jackman, but Hugh Jackman has that kind of like demeanor and look that just sells movies. People like to see him in anything and
Yeah.
everything. So they elevated Wolverine's role as to be the one sent back in time. It works with him being the one sent back in time because his mutant ability to be regenerative can withstand the physical toll that it takes mentally. I guess it takes a lot of physical toll on your brain, like to the point where I guess it would kill anyone else just or really mess up anyone else if they sent him back too far. So that they kind of explain that with Wolverine and that works, but the whole Kitty Pryde thing is weird. Like her power has an evolution where she can phase through things and now she can phase you through time.
Right?
How does that work?
It's a little weird. I don't know.
They could have used, like, they were supposed to use Rachel. They could have used Rachel Gray and they could have made a new character play her, or they could have just went with Jean Grey again and she's alive in the future somehow. And like, I don't know. Ah, well, I guess since she's dead, yeah,
She's
you'd have to
dead.
just do Rachel. Just cast a new girl as Rachel, and then you could have that girl written into the new storyline. You could have her time displaced at the end of Days of Future Past, because that future gets erased. Have her time displaced, and she could be a part of the new generation of X-Men and reboot from there. But instead, they're like, "No, we're gonna do this really weird, convoluted plot device with Kitty." It's like the biggest ex machina you could ever imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more of a MacGuffin than an ex machina, I feel, because it's like, here's your tool to get you where you need to go. But
I guess, yeah, I can see what you mean.
um either way, it's bad storytelling.
Yeah,
Um so
but that's one of the bigger flaws in the movie. The rest of the movie is
yeah.
saved by a lot of other
Other than that, like it's one of those moments where if you're able to forgive it, it's a great movie. It's kind of like that with how I feel with Civil War, Captain
Yes,
America. It's just like this is
yes.
your conflict is so pointless. So if you're willing to forgive that like whack like conflict that they try to engineer, then it's a good movie. But
Yeah, because the whole point behind the Civil War concept is so flimsy and it had no weight. But it's like at the end of the movie when, like, Iron Man was like, "I got to take the dude on," and it's like, "Why? What's your whole motivation behind this?" He's like, "Well, he killed my mom," and I'm like, "Okay, I can get behind that. Like, I can understand what you mean. Like, the dude murked my mom. He's
yeah,
got to go, and that's it." Whereas this big convoluted plot was like, "Oh, we all have to fight now because of this." I'm like, "No, what? Don't even motivate me behind that. I can't get behind this. So you guys shouldn't get behind this. You're all like way intelligent and like bigger, larger than life people. What is this real petty shit that you're getting your motivation behind?" But once you remove that, you're like, "Okay, this movie's fun. I like this." And
yeah,
same thing here. And you get such an ensemble. It's just like that. You get the old characters like the Fassbender and like McAvoy crowd crossing
yeah,
paths with the Stewart crew and all that. I mean, even Kelsey Grammer shows up as a cameo in it. I
sure.
love it. This movie has and that was like, he was like the best part of Last Stand, which is hard to believe that there were really any good parts of that. But he was one of the parts that made the movie slightly bearable. But I mean, that's slightly. Still, bearable doesn't make it good.
No, it doesn't. I enjoyed it. It was great casting. I was like, that's perfect casting. That's great.
And did you notice how they sidelined in the Rogue cut? They sidelined Kitty Pryde, and Rogue takes Kitty's powers, and they bring back Anna Paquin
Yeah, I
and
did see that.
make
It's
her
in
do.
the uncut version they had it, or is it
Yeah,
deleted scene?
it's the ad cut. It's they just call it the Rogue cut, but
Okay.
it's the singer came through it. He cut it and then put it out when the DVD released, and it's just like they bring back Rogue. But see, it changes the storyline too, because Iceman dies there. When they save Rogue, he sacrifices himself, and
Yeah.
that's what happens. Because remember that part where Wolverine like stabs Kitty
Yeah.
on accident and she's like bleeding out? It's like they essentially just keep it anyways, and she's like, "Oh no, I'm fine. I can do it still." And they're like, "We're not going to bring Rogue in for the theatrical release." She's not making it into this one,
No.
which
Well,
was still interesting.
she had that 1 second at the end of the movie.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I
Yeah.
always forget about that. That blink where if you like blink, you can miss it.
Yeah. She was
Yeah.
walking by with Bobby.
Yeah. I did like that they brought Bishop into the fold. That was cool.
Oh
He got some
yeah,
time.
Bishop in the his character design was badass too.
Oh, so dope with the
So good.
gun.
Yeah,
It's like the
perfect.
conduit for his
Yeah.
power. Oh yeah,
I
because
was like, oh, I hope we see more of Bishop, and then no,
no.
you see nothing.
Every time he was in it, he was badass. Sunspot was there too, which
Sure,
was interesting. That was kind of cool.
sure. We
And
got Blink,
War,
I guess.
Warpath.
Cool. Warpath
Warpath
was
was
there,
dope.
yeah.
Not Thunderbird, but actual Warpath, which was dope. Like I was real into like when they introduced him to X Force, so that was cool to see him actually get some time frame. And
Oh
Blink,
yeah.
I love Age of Apocalypse, so her being there was dope. And they finally brought back Colossus, which was Daniel Cudmore, and he was Colossus in the older ones too.
Right.
He's played Colossus continuously, except for the Deadpool movies, which what was it? I think they brought him back in Age of Apocalypse. He's like one of the few actors that actually span most of the movies past
Mm.
Days of Future Past.
Oh,
I think the
okay.
only original crew person was Daniel Cudmore as Colossus,
Gotcha.
and of course Quicksilver was enjoyable in this as always because it is
Yes.
Quicksilver. He's a scene stealer in every movie he's fucking in.
Yes. And they had to really like sideline him after that. It's like, well, he's the
Oh,
strongest person
super.
ever, so let's get
Oh,
rid of him.
oh, it's rough in fucking Dark Phoenix. Yeah. Oh my god, it's so.
Every
I don't.
time. You're gonna see this every movie he's in.
My
He's
heart
gonna
rate's
do
gonna. We'll
something.
save it to the end when we get to
He's
Dark
gonna,
Phoenix.
yeah.
We're talking Days of Future Past. That's like the anti-Dark Phoenix.
Days
Like,
of Future Past.
this is a happy space. Happy space. We talk about good things here. We're all happy. Like Peter Dinklage as Bolivar Task. You think that would be weird, but it
Well,
was great.
it
It was.
worked.
It worked. Even though they recast Bolivar Trask like 3 times throughout the whole mythos, like there were 3 actors I think that played Trask since the beginning of the X-Men movie Inception, and that's it's
That's
just
funny.
funny. He's just palette swapped everything. It's like a middle-sized like white dude to like an older tall black man to then like tiny Peter Dinklage.
I remember the black man.
Yeah, like
I
he was the
remember
last one I think
that.
in X2 I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Once again, we get Mystique and Jennifer Lawrence doing Jennifer Lawrence things that takes me out of this whole thing for the most part. And then there's a moment at the end where uh, Wolverine gets captured by Stryker, and you're like, okay, cool. This is kind of like setting up his origin story. And then his eyes turn yellow, so you're to assume it's Mystique. So you're like, why do that? What's this? What for? So Mystique saves Wolverine. What's the story behind that? And then that's it. We get nothing
Because
about
they
that. Nothing.
completely write it off when Apocalypse comes out.
They write off a lot of things from here on out after this.
Yeah, because he's
We're gonna
he's
find
now
out.
captured. Wolverine is now captured in Apocalypse by actual William Stryker, who is now William Stryker again and not Mystique.
Yeah.
Somehow they switch roles, but they never explain that. Never touch on that. It's a plot thread that will never get answered, which is unfortunate because they set up some cool stuff. Because I'm like, oh, in this mythos, does Mystique secretly the one running? Like in this timeline, is Bolivar or is Stryker Mystique from now on? Like that's
Like,
cool. I like that. Like I
okay,
get
if you
behind.
put it that way, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like that'd be really cool if like she's secretly running Weapon X and
Weapon
she's building
X.
her own mutant task force, and then later on they do like Weapon X storyline and she's involved in it, and that would work. I'd be fine with even Jennifer Lawrence showing up as the character if that's how they want to elevate her. At least it works organically to their mythos that they're building. Instead they just like, fuck it, this plot thread is gone and we're just gonna do the beginning of the end, which is Age of or the Apocalypse movies. It's where this is the high water mark right here. The wave goes back from this point. It really does.
We get a very shitty Nixon actor in this. No one ever. Everyone always goes like shitty Nixon. No
Like
one ever.
comical,
No
like
one
Watchmen.
ever tries. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It never really like hits the landing. It's always very, very comical, kind of Saturday Night Live style Nixon.
Yeah, exactly.
uh, Unfortunate. But
Yeah.
the rest of the cast was well balanced and the characters were well balanced. So it's like even with these little things, they still were quite outshone by everything else.
Yes, agreed. Agreed. But yes, from here on out, well, we're gonna see a little bit of positivity next, but after that, where it's gonna start going downhill. So,
Yeah.
2016, we get our second spinoff, I guess. We get Deadpool, the movie, finally released after the shitty X-Men Origins Wolverine version. It's amazing because they did it once and it failed, and they were given a second chance and it worked, which is like a rare occurrence or situation. Like once you saw that Deadpool in that first Origins movie and it failed hard, I'm like, well, that's it. We're never going to see a Deadpool ever. So the
Talk
fact that they gave him, I don't even think they actually did give him another chance because someone leaked the test footage, right? And that pushed the studio to make Deadpool. I don't think that movie would have been made if that footage wasn't leaked.
Correct. Correct. Once that footage got leaked, everyone just started clamoring, and the buzz got so loud that the studio was like, "Okay, there's an audience here. Like, there's money to be made here. Like, let's greenlight this shit and run it through." Because Ryan Reynolds fought hard for that. I mean, by all means, this man has failed upwards in the comic realm. He
He sure
he
has.
he failed with Green Lantern, failed
Yep.
with the original iteration of the Deadpool, but that's not
Yep.
his fault. But I
No.
mean, that taint follows him. Still him behind the character. That's still him. That the stigma is still going to be there on top of him. So him to get this chance, to get this ability to actually shine again in a way that was so delightful and so close to the source material. Not, I mean, I'm not part and parcel of like the actual origin and all that stuff, but I mean like the character portrayal, the way the
Yeah.
design looked. It was
The
a comic
mood, the
book.
behavior, the tone
Yeah,
is
it was a comic
perfect.
book on film. Like it literally could have been. I could have been reading it and looking up and then
Yeah.
watching it on the movie, and it felt the same. The character and everything, and it was fun. And it made fun of itself. It made Ryan Reynolds even made fun of
Yeah.
himself. Made fun of the original Deadpool. Made fun of the actual Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Like, oh, even more in the second movie. They double
Yeah.
down. It's great.
I love
Yeah,
I,
what a
I love
surprise.
I love when Colossus drags him to the X Mansion. He's like, we're gonna take you and talk to Charles," and he goes, "Which one, McAvoy
Stewart.
or
Yeah.
Stewart?" And those moments that are just like pull you out. It's great. Or like when he's all like, "Hey, I only see you guys here. It seems like they couldn't afford better actors."
It's like, yeah, we don't have enough budget for more money in the budget for better for more X-Men. Well, we do get it in the second one, but we'll touch on it when we get to it. But it's funny, like how they use it. The characters, like they take Naked Sonic's Teenage Warhead, whose
Sure.
powers are nothing like what they are in the comic, but still, it's fun enough, and I never cared enough about her character to be like, oh man, how dare they not portray her accurately? I'm like,
Yeah.
whatever. Who's gonna
It's
split hairs
who
over Naked Sonic
cares?
Teenage Warhead?
No
Like, get
one. It's the
over
perfect
yourself.
character to take because you could make it your own and no one's gonna really bitch about it.
And they were having fun with her name. But the portrayal of fucking Colossus and his voice and his mannerisms was so spot on because
Yes.
they really like fucking Americanized, like purebred the shit out of Colossus
Oh
in
yeah.
X2 and in Last Stand. I mean, he was dope. Like just like that moment where he turned to metal and then punched those dudes to the wall and like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I got like chills. I was like, oh, I got a Colossus story down. I know this dude. He's awesome. Like he's gonna do some shit. And then he was not in the movie. He's like, I
Oh,
can
he's
help
got
you. And then Wolverine was like, help them. And I was like, fuck those kids. I want to see Colossus throw
right.
down. Wolverine and Colossus could take on that whole team of fucking of strikers like dudes. No problem. This is bullshit. But instead, it's like we get this watered down Colossus, and Deadpool was like, "Here you go. Here's actual," and he was CG all the most of the time, but that actually worked. That worked. The CG
Yeah.
Colossus, he never shows his human form, and he's always like really Russian, like almost campy Russian. But Colossus is also like kind of like a Superman kind of guy. He has that Paragon mentality where he's very naive, and his good motivations and morality can kind of blind his judgment, and like Deadpool plays off of that really well and like plays with him as if he's like the dumb paladin, of justice. And like the X-Men don't kill, but I love like
Yeah.
Colossus's like Russian reluctance about things where he's like, win in Russia. It was great. And I thought that was fun, and I like that they brought him back in the second one as well. But not to get too far into that one, Colossus was one of the high points because of his comic book portrayal and Deadpool. Both of them, they worked so well in this movie, so well.
So well.
And it was funny. It was the funniest X-Men movie, like the
Yeah.
funniest hands down. You would say it was the funniest X-Men movie.
Sure.
I mean, Wolverine's middle finger from the first one aside, like that. This movie was just, they had so many good jokes, so many puns, so many like meta references. It's just constantly the fourth wall in the movie flowed within each other in the
What
symbiotic relationship.
What did you think of the bad guy, Ajax?
Poor Ajax. Poor cleaner. Geez. Francis was forgettable, and I almost think that was the point. He literally made him like a dual axe wielding generic villain. Like his portrayal as being a part of Weapon X and his connection to it all felt kind of ham-fisted.
Sure.
But that works in a Deadpool movie because the Deadpool movie was trying to make fun of the other movies and how they got to it. They're like, look at this. Oh man, what was the other name he always called Ajax to make fun of him? I can't remember. It was like another cleaning product or something.
Mr. Clean?
Mr. Clean, yeah, or something like that.
He was bald. I think they made a Mr. Clean joke.
Yeah, there was all these like dumb little like it was Ajax was just meant to be a joke. Like he wasn't really meant to be an interesting villain. Like the other characters that they put around um him, like that one chick that Colossus fought. I can't remember her name. But she was
Oh, yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. Played by Gina Carano. I forget the character, though.
Angel Dust? Is it Angel Dust? Yeah. It's supposed to
Angel.
be Angel Dust. That's
Oh,
the
no,
name of the
it's.
character.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is that
I'm not familiar with that, but like she seemed more like a badass like villain. Like they did a good job with her and like made her feel like oh man, she's like a force to be reckoned with, and that was kind of cool. So that worked well with Francis, but overall, like it was all about Deadpool and just him throwing down with people. Like the regular, you could have just had generic, mainless villains and like a mafioso guy at the top, and Deadpool could have been doing a mission to kill him, and it still would have worked. It really didn't have to be like a Apocalypse or Colossus or not Colossus, Magneto or someone like that. We didn't need it for this. This movie
Mhm.
worked well enough on its own, and I just enjoyed just so much of like the over the top combat scenes and the use of music to flow with those and the cinematography. Great movie. Great fucking movie. Like almost up there like with Days of Future Past. Just a little bit below it because Days of Future Past has emotional weight to it. Deadpool did have some like a little like heartstring tuggy moments with his girlfriend and all that kind of thing, like trying to save her and him like being disgusted with himself. Like, that was real stuff. I'll give it that, but the history and the lineage tied into my emotional investment with the older X-Men movies was much deeper in Days of Future Past, and that's why I give it the lead.
What'd you think of the whole love story aspect of it? Because Deadpool usually he's like been married like 13 times. He even married Death just to fuck with Thanos.
Yeah, yeah. The game had like a concept that was kind of heavy on that, and like that was a whole arc, and it was just pretty funny how that really played out. And Thanos was like, "Come on, man," and Deadpool's like, "Yeah, man, I'm into her too. Let's do this." Oh God, yeah. His relationships in this movie in many ways could almost even be seen as like a rom com. Like it has that kind of aspect. I mean, didn't they release it on like Valentine's Day or something?
It's a Valentine's Day movie. He even says it's a Valentine's Day movie. It's
Yeah,
a romantic comedy.
yeah, it's a rom com. So like,
Yeah.
geez, if it's a rom com, then this would have to be my favorite rom com. The greatest rom com ever made. I mean, it was you snuck in like a Green Lantern burn into a rom com. All right, I'm down.
Right.
Yeah.
Stan Lee's cameo was a stripper DJ in this film.
Oh shit! It was. He did have that kind of raunchy cameo. It's. I love Stanley. Oh man, I just love how he embraces his role in these movies. He was like the one good like factor in was it Captain Marvel? His
his
Mallrats like
his
cameo.
Mallrats, yeah, script reading cameo. That was cool. That
That
was a
was
good
that
line.
was yeah, that was like the best part of the movie. I was just like, this is great. And then back to being downhill. But yeah, I don't know how do you feel about this movie overall and like your place versus like some of the other movies like Days of Future Past or X2?
I would put it up there pretty high. I would top three for sure.
Ah, I can agree with that.
It's just a breath of fresh air. Character portrayal is spot on. I can forgive some points of the story. in terms of like the whole love scene, girlfriend stuff. And they played with it a little bit where they're all like weird kinky and like they're into weird kinks and stuff like that. So they didn't go quite like cliche. They did a little bit of they let her fuck him. So that's different. That's different.
Yeah, yeah. He was not having it. It's like, nope, nope, shut it down. Shut it down. Yeah, it was definitely a funny approach on it. So it didn't have that kind of very by the book tropey rom-com uh feel. Like it definitely broke the mold and made bank for a rated R movie.
It did. It did.
That
It
shit broke
did.
records. All the companies like stood back and were like, "Well, maybe there's something here." And Disney says they're going to stay true to it, but we'll see how long that goes.
We shall see how this goes. It's yeah, I'm curious how they play this out. But any last thoughts on Deadpool?
Um, great was a great movie, not a good movie, a great movie.
Great movie. Was wait, what did you just say? Was not a great movie? I
No,
totally
it wasn't a good movie. It was a
It was
great
a
movie.
great movie. Gotcha.
Yeah, it is a step above good. Wolverine, that was a good movie. Deadpool, great.
All right. Moving on. Same year, 2016. We go X-Men Apocalypse. Are you Age of Apocalypse? I think, right?
No, just Apocalypse. If
Just
it was
Apocalypse.
Age of Apocalypse, that would have been dope. Oh, I love that. That's one of my favorite arcs from the '90s. When I
Right?
actually went back and collected it, it was actually Zach gave me all the trade paperbacks. A friend of ours like gave me the trade paperbacks of all the Age of Apocalypse, and I just dove into it because I never read it. And this was in like probably like 2005, and or 2004 something like that. And I read it, and I just fell in love with the characters and the portrayal and the alternate take on the mythos. And so I thought maybe Apocalypse, because when Days of Future Past ended, the end credit scene was literally Apocalypse, like some
Yeah.
person assembling a giant pyramid in Egypt, and like there were four horsemen coming up in the background, and I'm like, oh, I'm ready for this. And then you get this movie, and you're not quite sure what happened.
Yeah.
Didn't stick the landing this time as well.
We talk about we praise, we boast, we say great things for Apocalypse and the character, and this is definitely not the take I was expecting nor wanted.
I
It's
don't know. I don't know what happened here with Singer, because normally when Singer, I guess it's because he wasn't producing though. I think Simon Kinberg is
Kinberg.
the one on the production lead this round. I know that Singer's evolved with the production, but I think I remember specifically hearing that Kinberg took more of the helm on the production with this. And I feel like this is because this has a lot of feel to what Dark Phoenix had going on. Like a lot of the problems, a lot of the mistakes you could already feel beginning to rear their heads and become more prominent. And I could see that that's where it's tied to Simon. But still, it wasn't the worst of the X-Men movies, and by all means, it was barely I could even say a good X-Men movie because it had some moments that were very good. But I mean, that's even saying it's a good X-Men movie almost feels labored.
I wouldn't say it's good.
Yeah, that's
It had a moment or two, but I wouldn't say it's good. I mean, you had that Quicksilver scene once again, very
yeah.
similar to the first one, and it was great. I loved it.
That sideline instantly of just like, well, we gotta nip this in the bud and make this irrelevant. And they had that plot thread with Quicksilver and Magneto that they never fill either with them being his son and stuff.
They never pay that off at all.
They always build up to it. They keep building up to it like they're right up to the point, and they're always like and then they cut away, and then they keep doing it again and again. Like even later on in the other part when they cut to it in like what Dark Phoenix, it's still so
Mhm.
it's just more sloppy writing and sloppy character development beginning to really rear its head here.
And here we're introduced to where they keep doing this. We're going to keep doing this with these movies, these terrible movies, for some reason, and that we're going to skip a decade each time. And now we're in the 80s this time, and we're introduced to Jean Grey and Cyclops and some of the characters, and this is when you find out that they're still somewhat they're keeping continuity with the old films, so that's why they're skipping and hopping decades, and it
Correct.
it just doesn't make sense to do this story was.
If they rebooted it, would have been fine, but because they're still trying to tie it and continue the progression, it's really weird. Because the only throwback to the older characters that fit is Wolverine, and in Age of Apocalypse, they have a whole scene where they're going into the Weapon X labs and or compound, military compound, and they like literally run into Wolverine, which is the iconic Wolverine from Weapon X wearing his
Yeah,
headgear.
with the
That
headgear.
was really cool. See, there are things like that that made me feel that it was like a fun movie, but if you can't break those parts away from the greater part of the movie to judge it, then it's not a good movie. It really, I concede, it is definitely not a good movie. Oh man.
What did you think of Jean Grey? I forget her name. Sansa?
Sophie Turner?
Sophie Turner. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought she was a fine Jean Grey. She was not anything crazy, but anything. She was very run of the mill. She was a cookie cutter Jean Grey. She didn't stand out. But I mean, the way they write her character in this, anyways, and the way they write the Phoenix, especially in this movie before they even explain it, it just feels kind of a little muddled. And and it was '80s, so they introduced a lot of like characters like Storm, Nightcrawler, like the actual like Psylocke, a lot of the people from the Giant Size era of X-Men,
Yes.
like the newer stuff going into like the '80s, from the '80s to like the '90s and stuff. Like you get a change, something new, but you're really losing out because you never get that original X-Men. You never get that.
Never got it.
You never get that. I mean, Beast is here, Jean and Cyclops, but not,
Not in
you
the same
know,
time period.
not Angel on their team, just someone different.
Because
Like
remember,
he's set up on a different team completely.
they are like all the original uh, from X-Men First Class. They're all 40 right now. Keep in mind that they're 40. Like they're
Yes,
hopping decades, even though they look the same. Like they're only a year or two apart from one another. No, no, it's a decade. A decade that's gone by.
like you're you're telling me Beast is 40 years old.
Yeah, and they're gonna
McAvoy's
and they're gonna
McAvoy
do it
barely.
again. They're gonna do it
Yeah,
again, and it's gonna be even more ridiculous next time. It's okay. I don't know why they're playing with time. I guess they're doing it just to compensate with the fact that they're trying to keep continuity, and it just literally ruined everything. Not everything, but like I feel like it just it if you don't have that continuity like in place, everything else kind of falls apart because you don't even have you're writing a story around something. You're not really writing a story.
exactly. It's like it was like the last season of Game of Thrones. It all just went off the rails. Like they didn't understand how to maintain the characters and build up the continuity, move forward. But it's like you had all the pieces of the original X-Men here. Like my whole point was is that you could have made such a good movie with just these characters, bring Angel into the fold, like don't jump 10 years ahead, jump maybe like 4 or 5 years ahead. I mean, you could do it in the latter part. I mean, I'm fine with it being a part of the 70s and the 60s because original X-Men was introduced in the late 60s anyways. So, I mean, sure, late 70s is still a different time, but it's close enough than
Yeah.
the 80s. So, and fucking Warren Worthington, one of the most like richest kids in the world, is some sort of cage fighter.
That
He's
was
like
an interesting choice.
he's like
Yeah.
a German cage fighter. I mean, they make him into Archangel in this, which was awesome, but still weird. And yeah, how come he gets the crazy metal wings and metal upgrade, but Storm doesn't, and Psylocke doesn't?
Psylocke doesn't, because they're women, of course.
I guess. And
I don't
then
know.
I don't understand. Wait, who was the other fourth horseman?
It was Magneto
Oh yeah, and
because
he.
he had a family, and once you saw that family, you're just like, oh man, they're gonna die.
Oh
And
yeah, I
then
totally.
five minutes later, they die.
God damn it! I just like the Magneto subplot was so bad I forgot about it, and then it all just came back to me right now, where he saves the guy at the mill, and he saves his life, and everyone looks at him, they're like, "Whoa, he's a mutant, but he totally saved our friend. You know how we should reward him? Let's go like murder his family in a double KO." I like how the guy accidentally fires his it's
So dumb.
wooden bow and arrow. They come with wooden bow and arrows and stuff because they're like Magneto can control metal, so we're gonna kill. We're gonna take him out with these wooden sticks and arrows, even though there's metal in everything in the world. There are metal minerals in the ground. They can use them at any time, and he's like, "Oh no, these wooden bow and arrows. What do I do? Oh, I'm gonna watch my wife and daughter die in the most awesome double KO ever."
It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, but you got to motivate him to stop being a family man.
One wooden arrow pierces two people, and it's like such a shoddy wooden arrow
It's
too. It
it
really,
like wobbles
yeah,
in
these
slow
people
mo,
whittled it just
and
now.
you
None of these
see it
people
going.
had this on hand.
It's ridiculous. So yeah, Magneto was the fourth horseman. It ended with everyone punching Apocalypse, essentially, more
Yeah,
or less. Like Apocalypse taken out by punchy fools.
and then Jean went Phoenix.
Oh right, and then
Yeah,
let's talk about that where we get Xavier just going like unleash your power, and she just does the Phoenix, and that's it, and we don't talk about it, and Apocalypse is dead.
yeah. Oh, and they blew up the mansion and killed off Havoc. Don't forget about that. They spent all
Right.
this time like fucking shoehorning Havoc into this goddamn fucking series, this new reboot series, and they just kill him off.
They just kill him off,
Like everybody gets saved in the mansion
except for Havoc.
by Quicksilver, except for Havoc, and even it's like an offhand thing where like, "Where's Havoc?" And Quicksilver's like, "Oh, I might have missed him." No, no, and they're like, "He's dead." They don't even confirm it. It almost feels like it's like a red
Yeah,
herring or something. Like, is Havoc gonna come back? Is like he gonna be one of the Horsemen? Like that would have been doper. That would have made more sense than like how they
it would
portrayed a
have.
lot of people. Make
Yeah,
make Havoc a Horseman
that
and
would have been
bring
cool.
Angel into the fold, and now you have all the original X-Men,
There you go.
except Iceman. But I mean,
Except Baba. Baba.
but they could have done that too. They could have brought him in. I would have been fine with if they didn't get Bobby and got Kurt and Storm, then I would have been fine with that. I'm fine. And Psylocke being a villain is okay because she's always in that like kind of like
Grey Zone,
thief
yeah.
role, kind of stuff like that, or like mercenary role. So that worked, but still, they should have done more with her instead of just making her.
She just
She didn't.
posed. She
She
just
didn't even do
posed
the
in every
energy
scene.
daggers. She did like the psychic sword instead of a psychic dagger. She made like a sword, like how she does in the current comics. Like
Did
that's
she? I thought it was
yeah.
like a dagger. I have to relook. I have
It's
to
super
rewatch
long.
it.
It's like a whole. It's like the length of a sword. It's funny. Like it looks weird.
But she's actually holding like a hilt and
No, no, it's just like it's just this weird. You know her weird energy like psychic
sure.
dagger. She comes out of her hand. Make that the length of a sword instead of a dagger.
Gotcha.
It
Gotcha.
looks
Yeah.
dumb. It was all she looked exactly like the character, but the portrayal of the character was completely wrong. So
Yeah.
fuck it. Yes, it's shit like that that ruined this movie. Like that just really brought it down.
This movie had less Jennifer Lawrence, so that made me somewhat happy. It's a positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
It still had a decent amount of Jennifer Lawrence because, mutant and proud.
People got upset over the billboard. Do you remember when the movie came out?
I
And
don't.
like in LA, they had the billboard with Apocalypse like choking Jennifer Lawrence, and like
It's hot.
it was just like him like had her by like one hand, and people were like, "This movie is promoting violence against women." I was like,
Kind of.
what? I don't know. It's just she's the protagonist versus the antagonist. They're fighting each other, and he's trying to kill her. Like, I mean, what? So if it was him choking out a dude, it's not promoting violence against men. I don't understand. We got a role reverse. If it was a woman choking out Charles, it's Moira choking out Charles in there. No one would care.
Right.
A buddy of mine actually got that one of the billboards. They had it at the movie theater, and
Oh,
afterwards
nice.
they take it down. They like throw the stuff away. He had someone he knew, someone that worked there, dumpster dove and got it out for him. He hangs that shit up in his house.
Awesome.
It's like that's funny. But yeah, Apocalypse, not forgettable enough. That's what I have to say about it.
Man, such a disappointment, and it's gonna be disappointments from here on out for the most part, or at least for the
Not
X Men,
all.
for the main X Men movies.
Yes, yes, the mainline X-Men movies. That's it. Like I
There's
said, the high point already came and passed with
the
Days of Future Past.
garbage has been lit. It's just growing bigger at this point. And I'll vent more of it as it comes to the culmination. But let's
Yes.
move on from here and let's go to 2017, and we get something very lovely. We get Logan, the end for Hugh Jackman and Wolverine's character. Now I love this movie. I
A
thought they
breath
did
of
it.
fresh air.
It's a breath of fresh air. It's the loosest of adaptions in terms of adapting Old Man Logan content, but it was great. I thought they did a good job tonally. I thought they did a good job ending his character, his kind of arc throughout these movies. I liked that we didn't get so I guess you could say the only like kind of similarity to Old Man Logan and is that like instead of Wolverine and Old Man Logan wiping out all of the X-Men, we are to assume that Charles Xavier had like a crazy like panic attack or whatever
Yeah, like a seizure
his
or something. Yeah.
dementia set in and just killed all the mutants. And
Yep.
it's kind of crazy because it's very subtle. You just left to believe that like Magneto's done something. I mean, Magneto, Xavier's done something in the past, and that's the reason why all the X Men are gone. And then you see it later in the future. You see him do this like seizure, and I thought that was kind of cool. It made no sense, like if you think about it, but like visually, it was awesome.
Logan was a strange movie. Like it after Apocalypse, you really kind of are going into this movie like, all right, well, what else is gonna happen? Like, are they gonna just go off the rails with this? Like, you start to think like, man, they should have ended at Days of Future Past and should just stayed there, and they should have started anew. But whatever. Hugh Jackman's on for one more ride. The Logan solo or the Wolverine solo movies are either terrible or run of the mill okay. So your expectations are so low going into Logan that this movie is just set to win. Like it's so awesome. Like they poise this movie to as like a comeback because like you go into this and instantly you're like, this is a different type of X-Men movie. Like this is more of a Western. And I guess James Mangold is more into like Westerns. Like that's kind of his favorite
Mhm.
genre to really write to. And I guess in the Wolverine, I could tell there were moments it felt like it. It felt like more of like a samurai western, like a Kurosawa kind of thing. But this, like straight up, is like a western in the sense, but with like a futuristic twist and an X-Men twist. Because this is still Logan based off of the main X2, X1 timeline.
Yeah,
Logan, like this is a sequel literally to the Wolverine, 100%, except it takes place further in the not as far in the future as like Days of Future Past, which I think is a different timeline
it's a
now.
different timeline. Yeah,
Yeah, that one doesn't even. But this is supposed to be, I think, uh, not even that far along though, because that was supposed to be in a distant future, even though it's a different timeline. Well,
right.
no, because like Xavier's
It
pretty
was,
old,
yeah, I
so
imagine
this
like
might even technically
20-ish
be
maybe.
further. Yeah, because there was advanced technology, the cyborgs, and a lot of that kind of stuff. So it was pretty. It was definitely meant to be further in the future than normal. But I mean, their portrayal of Wolverine is like this, like kind of like, oh gosh, what was uh that Western Unforgiven, right? That's the one where he's like the retired cowboy or mercenary, and he's going on for one last ride,
I don't
and
think I've
he's
ever seen that.
it's like they do a samurai version that I had saw not too long ago with Ken Watanabe, and
Okay,
then there's the original Clint Eastwood one, but it has that feel of like Unforgiven
gotcha.
is really like the old grizzled cowboy coming back for one more ride, kind of taking on his old duties, and that's what happens with Wolverine. But he's like a fucking limo driver. The
Yeah,
movie just has so much stuff. They
sweet.
learned all the right things from Deadpool. Deadpool and Logan, they all understood how to play with the mythos and have it be fun. Like none of these movies really fit too well to the original canon. Like you said, this has not much to do with the Old Man Logan story that everyone knows and loves. That was written by what was that? Mark Miller, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like way separated with that, but I like that still because if you do the movies and the shows and the characters right, if you write them well enough and you portray them in what you're trying accurate to the story you're trying to tell, then it doesn't bother me. If you take your characters and you try to shoehorn a bullshit narrative to them and like force fist them down my throat and they don't evolve organically and they're propped up by this weird concept that doesn't fit to the rest of the story, then I don't want it. I'm gonna start nitpicking it. I'm gonna say like, why isn't this just like the comics? Like, just do the comics. They got that
Yeah.
right. If you're gonna go outside the box, then fucking like you gotta land that. If you don't, then you stick to what fucking the story is already put forth. Because I don't want to see
Stick
these
to the
characters
canon.
shit over. I don't want to see another Swamp Thing. I'm glad that got canceled. They either do it exactly like the comics or they go off the rails, and they did not go off the rails. They made it fucking procedural as fuck. But Logan was like threw off all the bounds and said like we're gonna do this how we want, and it worked. It really worked. It brought us back into the old mythos and brought us up to speed because this is not only a final chapter for the whole X-Men mythos going back to the X1 and X2 era, but this is Logan and Charles's final chapter because this is
Yeah.
their story culminating. 'Cause that's all we really get is mutant wise is Logan, Charles, and Caliban. Those are the older original mutants from the old X-Men era. Which
Yeah.
Caliban? Can we talk about Stephen Merchant for a second here?
Stephen Merchant, pale
What
ass motherfucker.
weird as Caliban, who was also in Apocalypse. They both chose a Caliban. They came out the same year. They both say that neither one knew. Both people, and I think it's sad because the portrayal of Caliban in Apocalypse was garbage, and the portrayal in this
Right?
was different but fun. Caliban was one of Apocalypse's henchmen at one point, and one of his horsemen, and
Yeah.
so him being in the Apocalypse movie makes sense, but the way they used him in the movie didn't make sense. So that's why I'm like, I wish they just would have done Logan because he just was kind of funny. They made it like he was like the comic relief. He was the just like he said, he's literally like always complaining about like we live out in the desert. I'm like albino, like I'm dying here, man. I wish they'd have given him a bigger role in the movie. He went out like a boss, but still,
Yeah.
Caliban, weird.
Weird choice. That was cool though. Stephen Merchant's cool. Let's talk about that Patrick Stewart death, which is I. It was point. I don't know. So Logan is like, we can't stop. We're gonna die. We can't stop. We're gonna die.
Mhm.
And then Patrick Stewart's like, all right, let's stop. And he's like, we can't stop. We're gonna die, but we'll stop. And then they and then he dies. I just
Yes.
don't like the motivation. The motivation for stopping in the first place. I know why. See, it's like moments like that. I know why you're stopping. You're stopping because you need to kill off Xavier, but find a better reason because that's a
Yeah.
stupid idea. That's a dumb idea.
The whole part of the movie was set up with them like they're on the run. It's like a chase movie, and then it's like if you do stop, you'll die. But then that Xavier plot seemed like it had run its course, and they were just trying to round it up. But it did feel ham-fisted. That part, I did have some problems with it. But overall, for the greater story, I mean, you're getting like fucking Donald Pierce is like, as a part of like they use like the Reavers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Reavers was like more of a thing that was tied to like Stryker and all that. So it's
Yeah.
weird that it's Donald Pierce as the head of the Reavers. I mean, he is a cyborg, but he's like a cyborg that's a part of the Hellfire Club. Like so, once again,
Right.
we're getting like Hellfire Club characters in different movies, but none of them have anything. It always so strange. Like the Hellfire Club and the Dark Phoenix stuff is such a good story in its entirety that would work so well in a movie. That'd be awesome. Like you could do the part where like all the X-Men get wrecked by the Hellfire Club and then Wolverine's getting back up and he's like, all right, now I'm gonna rescue everyone and they're gonna see what Wolverine's all about. That would be dope in a movie. Like all that how they portray that and then all the way to like Phoenix's End and all that. But instead they're like, we're gonna take bits and parts of all the Hellfire Club and Dark Phoenix information and characters and we're going to spread it all across across the freaking X-Men mythos. So you
Yeah.
could see echoes of it, but never truly get a payoff. I mean, I guess they could have went with other people, and I would have been fine with that. But still, it's weird that they used Donald Pierce here. Still, I mean, his portrayal was like in the movie was a badass. It's just his role, his purpose was out of place. But that wasn't that was all of this was over easily overlooked due to the breakout role of X-23. Oh, she sold
Ooh,
this movie.
Laura.
The human blender.
Yeah, man. She was great. She really did make this movie.
I can't I
Uh,
can't see this
Daphne
movie.
King.
Daphne King, that's her name. I wonder if
King.
she's been in
Yeah.
Keen. I wonder if she's been anything else since this because like she killed it as Laura.
She's in that His Dark Materials on HBO right now.
Oh, okay. So she's getting work at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted them to make a spin-off series about like her and all those other like random mutants that they ran into.
Right?
Those other different ones. Like, did you like how they introduced like was it like Richter, one of the kids?
I don't. Yeah, I believe I looked into it at one point. They did introduce some of like Alpha Flight, or not Alpha Flight, but
He
like
was like they
some of
they hit they hinted Alpha Flight because they say going back to Canada that they're in the future there's like mutant sovereignty and they have like a they're like willing to accept people asylum like a mutant asylum in Canada
yeah,
and all that. And that's all supposed to like allude to Alpha Flight and like I don't know if they really leaned heavily on Wolverine's history with them and a lot of stuff,
not really.
but they have Richter, which was just like he used to be like one of the Mutant Brotherhood or something like that. But they made him a kid in this. They all
Yeah.
were kids, and they were all like of it, like
Put
Latin descent
everyone, yeah, out of
because
place. That's weird.
because they used that weird like in Mexico, like
They were in
there
Mexico.
was the government was using or like some sort of like Weapon X tied to the government or something was using like them like to farm children essentially like they were using women abducting them and then like getting them pregnant and then like just killing them off and taking their children, all this crazy stuff. Oh man, that was a weird plot, but it worked. It still worked because the movie was trying to embrace its own mythos. It wasn't trying to fight the X-Men comics. It was just saying, okay, we're not loosely trying to do it. We're just going to do our own thing, and we're going to try to be as keen to that. And whereas if you try to step one out of bounds and then back in bounds at the same time, you leave yourself kind of split and you look funny where you're like, hold on to, don't suspend this. Like the comic stuff is still here, but then we also have this other ridiculous stuff that can't be in the same place at the same time. Now believe our movie, and you're like, oh, what are we doing here? But it worked.
They,
All the weird stuff worked.
it
Really did.
worked. There's a lady that kind of helps Laura, and she dies. And before she dies, she sends this video to Logan, and Logan watches this video, and this video is like the like highest quality, like high production value of what is supposed to be like her kind of filming on the down low while she's at work
Yeah.
and like showing these mutants, and you're just like, this is some really high quality shit.
Yeah, it's like
How
a
did,
medical like expose commercial made to like teach students. It looked like that. Like if you were
yeah.
trying to give like some sort of like rundown on like medical procedures and you have like a camera just right there in the operating room and stuff, but it's like, no, I was hiding this in my phone in my pocket. What's the future? You know, maybe phone camera technology. I mean, look, they're bringing out those iPhones with like 9 cameras built into them. So there you go.
That was awful.
In the year of
Awful.
Logan.
Yeah, Logan. We got to see Berserker mode finally after all these films. That was cool.
Brutal film, such a brutal film. Oh
Yeah.
man, it's like a grit, like it had that gritty western feel. I like that vibe to the whole movie where they're just like Wolverine's like, I'm doing it one last time. Remember when he had to pull out one of his claws, like didn't come out all the way, and he'd like pop it out more. Oof,
Yeah, and like,
it was rough.
oof, yeah, it's a tough one. But Logan, great movie, great ending
Sad.
to Wolverine. Very sad.
I
Dies,
cried. I got
being
teary eyed.
impaled. Impaled. He's like impaled, right?
Yeah, he gets piked on some like tree stump.
But they do pay out. What's her name? The precog in Wolverine, the Wolverine.
Yeah, the Wolverine. There's
Yukio was
yeah
her name. Yukio, I think that's her
yeah
name.
yeah like Yuki
Uh,
or Yuki.
yeah, she said like in that film, she said you will die holding your heart in your hands, and she dies holding Laura's hand. So I thought that was cool that they paid that off.
Yeah. Yeah, someone had mentioned that, and I like checked it out, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I see that. That's true. That was same. That was James that he did both films, so makes sense that he would tie that all together, which was
Hmm.
cool. That's what I meant. Is like it's unique that he took that movie as run of the mill as it was, and still kind of fit into the story that he was doing. And I
Yeah,
feel like that movie was like the Thor movies. They always felt like placeholders to build up the greater storyline, and that's
yeah.
really all they were. And so like they're okay for that, but they don't really go outside that bound, and that's what the Wolverine was. But it set this up, so it was totally worth it. It was like, wow,
Yeah,
what
that's
a
cool.
you built your framework and then closed it off, and we got closure in the all for all the X-Men movies, because like when it felt like that was it, like that was the ceremony. We were having a funeral for X-Men when she took the cross they made and she turned it sideways and made an X and put it on his grave. And I was just like, damn.
Yeah.
That's when I got choked up, and I was just like, all the emotions from like the history and the movies, and like looking
Hmm.
back at the years that had passed. I was just like, man, these movies, like, as some of them were really terrible, some of them were really good, and it was kind of a fun way to celebrate the mythos. And this really could have just been the end here. Like they messed up when they went to Apocalypse and they didn't end it at Days of Future Past, but then they could have just ended it here, because then you're like, okay, this is great. Like, just cap it off here. I've got closure. This movie was Oscar worthy. Everyone loved it. Like, I didn't hear any bad things about Logan. And as weird as the movie was, it still worked. And as sad as some of the characters dying off, it still was a nice bookend. I mean, it's a future story anyways, so they're all meant to die anyhow. Because like some of the X-Men aren't going to live forever. Like, what is it? I mean, sure, Beast looks like he's like in his 30s when he's in his 50s, but still, that guy's got to die somewhere.
Yeah,
So this was great. This was a good end, and I really
that's
loved
great.
this movie. This is definitely right when we were talking about like top three movies
Top
earlier.
three.
This is one of them. This is
This
one of
is
the top
it.
three.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on from Logan, we go to 2018. We get Deadpool 2. Now, this is a film that I thoroughly enjoy.
Hmm.
I thought it was a very fun movie, but it ultimately hits all the same notes as the first film. It was kind of contrived in the way, and there was like some jokes that just kind of felt out of place, and like it was too pop culture, and that's the problem when you add too much pop culture in a film. It's gonna make your film dated in like 3 years. So like the whole dubstep joke just didn't hit because like dubstep hasn't been cool for like 5 6 years now, and like this is 2016, and then like watching this film 10 years from now, that joke's not going to hit at all. And I'm just like,
Yes.
this is kind of awkward. The whole Bhupinder storyline kind of got out of hand after a while, I feel.
Yes, that is you hit the nail on the head. The pop culture jokes were a little more heavy-handed in this run than needed to be. It was a great movie. It was very much a great movie, but it did suffer and didn't quite hit all the notes that it needed to, like the first one did. I feel that the first one leaned more on making fun of the X-Men mythos, the X-Men movie mythos, and Ryan Reynolds movie Stardom mythos better. Like that was what really worked well in the previous movie. In this movie, they didn't lean on that as much, and they focused more on pop culture references of
Yeah.
current time, and that's where the movie kind of goes off the rails. Is like you're like, okay, this isn't gonna hold up now. This isn't gonna hold up later. No one gives a shit about this. Like I don't care. I don't really care much about that stuff. Make fun of more about Cable and how he's a weird time travel, like, red herring or like plot device. Like
Right.
let's focus on that. Like let's joke about that, because like the Cable and Deadpool stories from like the late 2000s was great. I love those. Those are some of the best
Sure.
comics out there for both Deadpool and Cable. Like hands down
And
for both of them.
you forgot about the third character, which is all the pouches.
Oh yeah.
Cable, Deadpool, and all of those
his,
pouches.
his upper torso accessory pouch holster shoulder pad combo, because the shoulder pad loops down into the straps that hold the pouch around him and that lead up, and they're all supported by his tiny little feet. How
Right.
is he not being crushed by the weight of his shoulder?
They even make a tiny feet joke in this movie where during the whole domino thing, while she's kind of like doing her powers, Deadpool is like, who would even create a character like that? Probably a guy who draws tiny feet. That was a funny scene.
Pretty much. That's a good nod.
Yeah. So that was good. There's a lot of good like hip jabs at what's his name? I can't think of the creator of Deadpool at the moment.
Rob Liefeld.
Rob Liefeld. Yeah, a lot of jabs at Rob Liefeld, which I thought was funny. And
He
Rob Liefeld
deserves it.
loves the jokes too. He's always like retweeting all the Deadpool stuff. He's in love with all
He should.
things Deadpool, but
He shouldn't be. He shouldn't be grateful for all the groundwork that was laid by other people. He may have created Deadpool, but he did not.
yeah.
He did not polish Deadpool. Like I said, read the Cable and Deadpool comics. Those
Sure.
are all those that stuff. Everyone needs to get down on that if you want to get good Deadpool writing. The farther Liefeld is away from touching Deadpool, the better. The bigger his feet will be. But yeah, oh man, there were so many funny little like moments in the movie that really made the movie shine. Though, like Brad Pitt being the Vanisher,
Right?
like, see, Vanisher is an old school X-Men villain. He's like the third or second villain that the X-Men fought in the original like Jack Kirby Stan Lee run of the X-Men, and his abilities to teleport. They even brought him in later on like X-Force and made him a part of it. They like literally like took him captive by putting a tumor in his brain. They had like Doug Foley, which was like elixir. He could like manipulate your organics. He like put a tumor in Vanisher's brain under the orders of Wolverine and said like, you got to help us, and if you don't, we're gonna leave that there. And the tumor was in shape of an X. It was funny as hell. But like that's the Vanisher, and they instead of bringing him in this like as like the actual Vanisher, I was like, well, that's dumb. But then they made it Brad Pitt, and they made him the Invisible Man, and that whole scene where everyone dies when they're like coming in and like there's like doing their big like, yeah, we're the X-Force, let's do this. That was worth it. That was fine. I was able to overlook the Vanisher because of how funny that was and how well that was written. That's how you save those characters and you do those weird kind of things. And the movie needed more of that. Less the pop culture references and more of that. Like more of going to the X-Mansion and like, you know, Deadpool going like, where are all the X-Men at? They're probably busy doing this, that, and the other thing. And behind him is a door that's open and all the X-Men
are there. Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes no sense because then they're all still their same age and they should be like now like in their 60s.
Yeah.
But it's like you see Beast go up and like close the door. There's like McAvoy all over in there, and it was real funny. And that stuff works. And the characters, how they did it, like once again, fucking Colossus was great. They did the most accurate portrayal of Juggernaut in any fucking X-Men like or non-animated medium. Like this Juggernaut in the movies like was terrible in Last Stand. I mean, sure, the actor who plays him, I can't remember his name, but he was in like Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels. He's like that big British guy.
Yeah, he's like a pikey.
Yeah, and he used to be a soccer player. Yeah, he's like Cockney when he talks and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, he was funny as Juggernaut, and he did the whole "I'm the Juggernaut bitch" reference, and that was like one of the funny parts in the movie. But he didn't work. It didn't work. Like, and he's not supposed to be a mutant. That's another thing, is they always get that wrong. Is he's never supposed to be a mutant.
Not a mutant. He has magic powers.
He has the crystal. He's like the gem of ruby of Sidorak.
Sidorak, yep.
It's an old god like Cthulhu and shit. Yeah, so he's like Charles Xavier's half brother, and they don't touch on that either ever in the stories really, which is funny. But whatever.
I hope they touch on Sidorak a little bit in Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness. I hope they touch on Sidorak, like, because he uses those like his like bands that he used in Infinity War, where I guess the band's a Sidorak. I don't think they could have said it. He couldn't probably say it out loud because of legal issues, but now that they have the rights, they could do that, as well as chaos magic. I hope they explain like chaos magic in this film. Hopefully, I don't know if they will, really cool. But we'll see. Back to Deadpool 2, though. What did you think of the fat kid, Firestarter, and the whole like relationship with him and Deadpool?
So they felt like it was a long reach to get Cable into the storyline, and using this kid as like the plot device was, I mean, it could have worked in a couple other ways, but still it felt kind of forced. It felt very like, why is Cable here? We just need to use this, and they didn't play with it enough. I thought if they were funnier about it and more throwaway about it. I mean, I get it that he was like that fat angry kid with the powers, So it does kind of feel funny in itself, but at the same time, it's not well enough written. Like it almost like those parts in the movie were always the low parts. And Cable was really cool in the way they portrayed him. Visually, he looked spot on. He looked
Yeah.
really awesome. I think that nod in the future to his daughter, like I wonder if that was supposed to be like Hope or something. I don't know what character they were trying to go with, but that was all very vague, and I wanted to know more about it. But
I think
I
it
don't know. They
was Hope, or at least
It
I
seemed
think.
like that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that she looked and the character design seemed like her, but yeah, like that was still like I didn't care more as much about that. I wish it was more of like them like trying to reveal the little secret plot behind like the government abuse and like the mutants, and that was interesting, but it just never got fleshed out as much. Black Tom
No.
Cassidy was in the movie. Did you notice that?
Black Tom Cassidy got shot. He's a
He did
racist.
nothing. Nothing. He did nothing in the movie.
Did
Absolutely
absolutely
nothing.
nothing.
Killed off. Useless as fuck. But yeah, they put Juggernaut in the movie, and Black Tom didn't end up really mattering or being like because they're supposed to be best friends, so that never happened. And that was really weird. But the fight between Colossus and Juggernaut was awesome. That the combat like scenes were great. All the fight scenes are great. Action scenes, all that jazz. Movie delivered. It was a good movie, a really good movie, but not a great movie.
And then the whole movie was set on stakes uh, involving like the girlfriend and like helping this kid and all this. And then he changes the past and makes this movie essentially pointless.
Yeah, they just have fun. They just go off the rails
It's
with
like,
the time travel aspect, and that was funny because then they play with it and they kill like in the post credit scenes they kill off Ryan Reynolds reading the
sure.
script to Green Lantern. He's like, "I'll do it," and then the Deadpool pops out and kills him, and then he kills the old Deadpool from Origins. Like a lot of that stuff, and that's funny because like Wolverine shows up in the movie, but it's like a clip. It's like Hugh Jackman from the back. It's just his recording, like the stock footage of Hugh
It's
Jackman
stuck. Yeah, it's
in
stuck.
Origins.
It's ridiculous. It
Like all
works.
that
I
stuff was
laughed.
what that's what saved the movie. Those things saved the movie, but it also made the plot really like I don't know. I couldn't tell. It seemed like they were taking the plot serious enough where we were supposed to care, but then the rest of the movie made the plot so invalid that it seems like it was impossible to really care. Like they should have went one way or the other. They should have consolidated and made it more of a serious X-Force movie, or they
Mhm.
should have just went more off the rails with it and been dumb about it.
Right.
Like killed off more people like Brad Pitt as Vanisher. uh, that was funny.
That was
Did you?
good.
Oh, what
We
was the
also
guy?
have Matt Damon making his cameo in this too, and Alan Tudyk,
Oh
who
yeah,
played like the rednecks when
in the beginning.
Cable comes to the future.
Yeah, I forgot that Damon has his now. Yeah, that's oh yeah, so bizarre. There's a lot of people in this movie. Like Terry Crews shows up.
Terry Crews is in this.
Geez,
Sure.
there was a bunch of people. Remember when they did that weird?
Celine Dion.
Oh yeah, good God. You're right. You're right. And then the original cast with like T.J. Miller and a lot of those people still come
T.J.
back.
Miller came back. We didn't
Zazie
really
Beetz
talk
was in
about
this
Zazie Beetz.
as
Domino.
Domino, but they felt more like she felt like Beyonce's character in like Goldfinger with Austin Powers.
Yeah, she really
I,
did. It's
she
like
felt like more like she was trying to be a blaxploitation character with just the way she like carried herself and like the guns and stuff. It reminded me of like those older movies from like the 70s. Which is not anything what Domino is about, which is weird, but whatever. Like the rest of the movie was like that with every character, so I'm like, okay. They
okay.
portrayed her powers accurate, which was fun.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
They had a good moment with her.
Yeah.
It worked. I thought it worked.
The whole movie really worked. It's just the story was the weaker point of the movie. It was more fun to just enjoy the weird, candid, like inside jokes and references. The references to the story, not like the pop culture stuff. Like we said, that got too over the top. That got too heavy. They rested on it way too much. I mean, when you're bringing dubstep in as a joke, your movie's starting to go off the rails.
Although, if you want to get a good laugh out of me, you say I'm Batman at an unexpected time, and I did not expect an I'm Batman in this movie, so that got a good laugh out of me.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's funny. Oh, I forgot about that. That's true. See, those are the fun points where he's still making fun of like the mythos and the genre. So hopefully the next Deadpool's good. How did you feel about that whole like Ben Savage thing? Like, or was that Fred Savage? Who's
Oh, and the Once Upon a Deadpool, the
yeah,
PG version.
where they're making fun of oh gosh. It was like his dad was or his grandpa was reading him something in one of the Princess
Princess
Bride. Or
Bride.
Princess
Yeah,
Bride. Yeah.
yeah, I
So
watched it.
like
It was okay. The scenes were great. The added scenes were fine.
I didn't even
Uh,
know that. I still never watched it.
the movie itself is not better. It's not good. It just feels like you're watching a TV edit of the film.
Yeah, I heard they added like 13 minutes. That's it, really. Like, I'm like, why would I go back to theaters to see this movie for 13 minutes? Like, when I like everyone typically rewatches a movie when it comes out. They'll see it in the theater and they'll see it when it comes out again. Why am I gonna just go back to see it again when I could just download
It's
it?
definitely like a deleted scene that they
Yeah,
tried to re-release in theaters, which
pass.
I'm not into that. People re-releasing your films just so you could boost
Yep.
your box office numbers.
Talk about you, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man. All
Spider.
right. Any last words on Deadpool 2?
Could have been better.
Could have been better. Moving on to the piece de resistance, or
Uh,
the penultimate garbage fire, if you will. 2019. Yes, folks, that's right.
Closing it strong.
We are talking about Phoenix. Dark Phoenix.
The darkest
So,
of timelines.
this movie is such a confusing movie. It has an identity crisis. It assumes that I know too much of these characters, which I guess if you're like if you treat me like a stupid comic book reader that'll consume anything, I guess yeah, you got it. But like in terms of these characters that you created over the past four movies or whatever, like you didn't tell me anything to get me like to care about them when they are motivated to do these things that they do. So
No foundation.
there's nothing like I don't care about anyone's intentions in this film. Everyone's contradicting everyone in this film. The movie ends. Not this movie. Apocalypse ends. It's like the best part of Apocalypse is the last 2 seconds of Apocalypse where they're all in the danger room and they're wearing those
Uh-huh.
awesome. They're wearing the cool Jim Lee '90s outfits.
Yes. Yes.
And then we go to Dark Phoenix and they're wearing the stupid first class outfits again. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on
Yeah.
with this movie?
I don't.
Again, we hop decades. Once again, we hop decades. So we're in the 90s again. But so everyone that was originally in first class is now in their 50s. They look great. They look like the 30-year-olds because they are 30-year-olds and it's only been a couple years between these movies. It's
Yeah.
so dumb. Everyone acts like it's their second film or like their third film, which it is their third film, right? But like usually a third film or a fourth, even a fourth film, it's like supposed to like in terms of continuity is like maybe 3 or 4 years apart. And these are decades, literally 20 years have gone by. So like these characters that should have like had growth over the course of like a couple years because you're decade hopping and because you're doing weird things, like this growth of these characters are like 10 years too late. These characters are acting like 20-year-olds still in their 30 in their like 50s. I don't get it. I don't get it. Like
Yeah.
everything tonally with the characters are gone out of the window in this movie completely.
It's it's a real sad bookend to what was once the one of the highlights of growing up watching these X-Men movies was just this moment of realization that like, okay, the rights are gone. This is one of our last hurrahs with Fox at the helm. And off the bat you already know something's up because Simon, the great Simon Kinberg, is both not only directing and writing again, but he wrote this movie. Like he is firing on all cylinders,
This
and
is
you now finally
his.
get
All
the
his.
example of what is wrong with the X-Men movies over the years, and what has been the issue, what has been the secret plague in the background of the workings of the X-Men movies, and it was Simon the whole time, because you see all of his nasty tropes that started to wiggle out through the other movies are now put on full display here for all of us to see in their grand horror. And it's just bloated with all of those problems, and that's the foundation. That is your foundation you're building on moving forward. Now we deal with the other issues that plague this movie. The fact that the continuity is thrown to shit, and they throw that away, and that gets kind of written off at not only with like the design of the characters but their portrayal, because it's 10 years later in the 90s. And I'll note that really there's not much that makes you think about the 90s in this movie. There's probably one 90s reference, and I can't even remember it. Like, I can't remember the gag that the throwaway 90s gag. Like, at least Captain Marvel did the whole thing with, like, referencing Mallrats and that was like, okay, that's funny, and that's, like, at least they're trying there. They didn't do anything in Dark Phoenix, really. Like, it could have been a movie that was filmed, like, it could have been a movie that was filmed in 2009. Oh, wait, it was, because it felt like a movie in 2009, and there was nothing different about that. So you add that to the gumbo trash fire that is this. Then we focus on the issue that has been a problem since the beginning. Jennifer Lawrence's mistake. That's what I want to call her, because
The
she
stink.
stinks in this.
The
She
stink.
stinks. It's terrible. Like, she literally is just ham-fisted in the beginning of this movie because she's like, I'm contractually obligated to do these movies, so could you just kill me off as quick as possible? She's got like the Harrison Ford Han Solo approach where she's like, just kill me so I can get out of this. So they force her to put on that makeup one last time, or they CG some stuff on her face, and then
Dude, this is the worst makeup job.
kill her. Oh yeah, she looks so
It's
bad as
so
Obsidian.
bad. It's
So that's why she's
terrible, man.
stinky. Yeah, and they kill her off in the most lame and just like non-emotional way, and it's so dumb. Her lines in this X-Men and Proud always are like, she's like, we should start calling it the X-Women because the men always cause trouble.
Oh my
I'm
god.
like, oh god, like
So
just kill
dumb.
her off already, please. And they do, which they spoil
They,
that in the trailer. Like, you
they
before you even go
spoiled
into
the
this movie, you
shit
already
out
know
of
she's
that bit.
dead.
You're like, oh,
Yeah,
she's dead.
yeah, and it's weightless. It's just Jean's progression like is weightless, and that's another issue. So them like elevating her character and then killing it off, like you're just like, I'm done with all that. I don't give a shit. And then the movie continues there because it's got other problems that add to that are due to the fact that they're originally going to use the scrolls as the background characters, but Marvel beat them to it essentially with Captain Marvel. And the scroll plot literally caused them last moment to like
Yep.
veer left and rewrite the characters. They found a way to make them fit to the mythos that like the stuff that like Joss Whedon was doing back in the day with like those aliens like with Crowd or whatever. He was like his race of people that are tied to like the X-Men. Like that works, but no one knows about that and it's so obscure. Like the scrolls would have worked so much better, but since they had to shoehorn that out real quick, they put in this like lifeless group of aliens that like take the form of humans, and you couldn't care less, and they're just like there throughout the movie, like really making you just not want to watch the movie because you're like, I'm not excited about the X-Men fighting these people, but whatever. And then they flesh out the Phoenix plot, which goes kind of similar. Like the movie literally kind of progresses very similar to how the Last Stand did, so that's another problem plaguing it. And then when it's all said and done, the payoff, the big climactic fight scene, and the character portrayals, it's just like you weren't even sure why you cared in the beginning, where you're like, maybe this like maybe First Class didn't really need to happen. You start looking back at the characters, and Days of Future Past was great, but like I don't really care about any of these characters anymore. I love James McAvoy, and I thought he was great as Charles Xavier, and Fassbender as Magneto were great, but like even then, I'm still like, I just don't really care. That whole scene where like Xavier's walking forcefully up the stairs. Like that was
Yeah.
weird. And
Yeah, that was
McAvoy
bad.
had them add that. Like he's like, let's put this in, and I'm like, that's a terrible idea. Like you're all making bad decisions about this movie. And then Magneto and uh Jean trying to stop that helicopter from crashing, that weird scene where they're like struggling with their hands out. It looks so funny because it looked like they were holding back like a shit or something. They're just like grunting and like pushing their hands out.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
great.
movie is a joke. It's a joke. This
Making their
movie is
best fart
laughable.
faces.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, and there's just like they didn't care. So why should I care? Like the writing
Yeah,
was so bad. They had like a party and then Cyclops walks up to Jean Grey and is like, "Did you hear what they're calling you? They're calling you the Phoenix," and they already established that like 10 years ago in Apocalypse. So like, why now?
Yeah,
Like it's like they didn't watch
they did it.
they didn't attempt to even like all you had to do was like not even watch, just like go Wikipedia your own
Mythos,
movies.
your own trilogy. Yeah, Kimber was there from the beginning in a lot of stuff. He was there in the background. He worked alongside Singer in like almost every movie. He had his hand in the pot all the time. So it seems like he wanted to do this movie from the beginning, and he finally got his chance to do it, and was like, "This is how I'm doing it. This is how I would have done Last Stand. This is how I would have ended this." It's just like, dude, we already got that. That's what you were going for, and we didn't like it. We wanted you to
Purpose.
step away from that. Yeah, like when you bring in Singer and he's on the helm again, at least it stands close to what he was trying to do, and I can eat that better than this I can't swallow. Like I didn't even see it in theaters. I waited till it like leaked online. I wasn't gonna jeopardize money on this, and I was optimistic going into it. The first trailer I saw, I was like, okay, seems like it could be interesting. They bring in like the more iconic X-Men team together, and I'm down for that. And I found out that they were gonna use the Phoenix Force as like a cosmic entity. Like the Phoenix Force is something from space, whereas in Last Stand it was like it's just a Jean's angry side. There's innate anger and power inside Jean, and I'm like, that's stupid. And this, at least, that's why both those movies are terrible, but this movie is just 1/100th of the percentage less terrible because they get the Phoenix right. They at least get the premise of the Phoenix right, and that's good. But that's it.
That's it.
That's
That's the one thing, I guess.
and that doesn't save it. The trash heap of the movie, that's smothered. It's smothered by all the smoke and garbage and fire. Like you can't find that beacon of hope is just drowned out. So
I
the
just
rest
don't
of the
get
movie,
why are they trying to do, they keep trying to do this in one movie when they should be doing this should be like
a
no,
trilogy,
it should be
trilogy.
yeah, it should be a bunch of movies. She
Dark
should get
Phoenix.
the Phoenix Force. She should do good with it first. Then she should turn bad.
Yes,
Eventually over
yes.
time. And you're just forcing all of this like
She never
all
went
of
from
this in
Phoenix
one
to Dark
movie.
Phoenix like in like 2 issues. It was a whole arc. It was the saga. There's the Phoenix saga. Then there's the Dark Phoenix saga, and then the Resurrection saga. They have all the sagas
Yeah.
broken up. This was like we're gonna hit every. It's the same problem Batman vs Superman had. Same problem those movies have when they try to like how many stories can we take from to make this one movie? It's like no. What one story should you be taking from to make this one movie? Because the one Phoenix saga alone could be a movie, and then Dark Phoenix could be its own movie, and then Resurrection could be its own movie, and then you could jump 10 years, and then that's fine. Then it makes sense. But instead, it's like, no, we're gonna do all the Phoenix content, one movie in the '90s that won't even matter. Who gives a shit? Go. They're fucking selling the rights anyways. Who gives a fuck? Woo!
They
It's like,
they just did not care. They
do you
didn't.
think do you think Kinberg went like Tim King with it, with like Batman, where he's like, "Fuck it, I'm killing off Alfred. We're
I'm
shutting it
doing
down.
it.
I'm killing Alfred."
We're snapping necks left
Yeah.
and right up in
Uh,
here.
and what are
Maybe.
they dedicated it to Stan Lee? They dedicated the movie. This is how they remember Stan Lee, and Stan Lee said that it was his favorite cameo in a movie because him and his wife were in it, and that's why it's his favorite. Oh no, that was Apocalypse.
No,
That was
that was
Apocalypse. That was Apocalypse.
the one where yeah, in Apocalypse
Yeah.
he's like holding his
With
wife.
his wife. Well, yeah. Yeah. And that was also the breakout movie for Charles Xavier's bald head.
Yeah.
Remember he lost his. We didn't touch on that in the podcast. Let's change it
Oh
back for a
right.
second.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He becomes iconic Charles because he's wearing Cerebro when Apocalypse like mind hacks him and it causes all of his hair to fall out. I'm
Sweet.
just like, what? That's the origin story for Charles.
That's how he becomes bald. This is dumb, but whatever.
All right, enough
Whatever.
on.
Yeah.
That one's dead, Barry. Let's not bring up. Fucking on my Phoenix is on my shit list right now. That's the one Apocalypse looks like a bearable movie compared to this. This is like you fooled me twice, you sons of bitches. This is my fault.
So many things. Like
New Mutants can't be this bad. New Mutants cannot be this bad. It's impossible.
it's
It's like,
I agree with that. It doesn't change the fact that it's not coming out.
it's coming out. It's out. Scheduled. It was April 2nd. They probably moved it back because on April 1st would have been too funny.
Yeah.
But like, I guess they work it. Uh,
Can we talk about the fact that Magneto seems to be just walking around a free man in this movie after killing the president and destroying a football stadium and putting it over the
or
White House
or
in the
in an
future.
apocalypse, he committed like almost mass global genocide, like mass
Sure.
destruction. There were notes of things of Magneto being a massive terrorist. Maybe it's just his power; he's just too strong, and they just like, well, no, because they locked him up before. So I don't know.
It's been
They
done.
just like
Yeah.
we're gonna shoehorn Genosha into this because that's not even a Phoenix storyline plot. It's not even a Phoenix storyline plot. Genosha
Not
is like
even.
that's a mutant massacre, all that stuff. Like Cassandra Nova's the villain in that. It's just that's something completely fucking different. Why they brought this into that? I mean, I have no idea.
Oh, it's
They've
so
just
simple. It's because Kimberg had to have his cool hair whipping mutant. He's like, I need this hair whipping mutant in in this movie now. How do we do this?
the
Genosha.
only mutant who pulls off dope dreadlocks is Bishop, and we should have just left that at that. This dude, weird, dready mutant dude, was so. It's like, I bet when they're like casting him, like we want someone, and they see that dude with his dreads, and they're like, dude, let's make a mutant based on it, because that guy's not in anything. I don't think that mutant is in anything. Like that's not a character from the comics.
Nope,
That's like
it's just a rant. That's Kimberg. That's a Kimberg.
that's Kimberg original creation.
It's
That
an
that is the
IC. Yeah.
embodiment, the physical manifestation of what the problem is here, and who Kimberg is, and what his movie making prowess is. And that's it. And Selene was in the movie. Selene, one of the oldest, most powerful mutants, was in the movie as that one bald chick who just gets killed on the train and like thrown off. And you're just like, this was not anything. This
The
was
whole
dumb.
fight felt awkward.
Yeah.
That ending fight where
Nightcrawler got all vicious and started murdering people, and like
oh
you're like,
yeah,
what?
he goes savage in that.
He's nothing like the Nightcrawler from the Claremont eras at all. Really weird. The Nightcrawler from X2 was more like the Claremont one.
Yeah,
Wow, that Nightcrawler was dope. That scene in White House. Ooh,
sure.
I
Oh,
still
that
love
scene
that
was
to this
awesome.
day.
Great scene. Great scene.
Yeah, unlike this fight on the train, which was garbage. None of it made sense. That was all really dumb.
It was so dumb. It was so dumb because there was like the one chick was trying to prevent Nightcrawler from teleporting to Charles, and it just looked like McAvoy holding his hand out like with a serious face for like way too long, and like it's just Kinberg clearly not knowing how to direct that scene, and you see
It's messy.
Nightcrawler, he's teleporting everywhere, but you just see McAvoy just kind of standing there. He's just like, did we did we cut? Should I still have a series? Okay, I'm gonna go back.
Is it still going on?
Oh, it's bad on all fronts: acting, story development, continuity, clearly design, continuity of design from one film to the next. You couldn't even give me the Jim Lee fucking outfits. You couldn't even do that.
No, no. It was the worst movie X-Men wise of this decade. It was easily. It's crazy. We
It
ended on such a hard just flop.
it is insane. I'm so disappointed in everything about this movie. Like I don't know. I'm trying to think of positivity. I guess like the
But
first 5 minutes were good. I enjoyed the first 5 minutes or so
mm,
ish, except for Mystique. Why is Mystique in space? She doesn't need to
uh,
be there.
yeah, see, like that plot too, the space plot, like that was pretty iconic to the original one. Like I said, that and how Jean gets the Phoenix powers, like all that stuff is like the closest thing I could say to something that I liked about this movie. The rest, I just didn't like anything. The villain, this weird alien race of people can just take the Phoenix power and like, what is it? What? Quicksilver's way too cool, so we have to sideline him super fast in this movie because he
Once
can just deal with
again,
everything. Yeah, it's like
always.
I can't wait. It's sad that I missed a world where just Last Stand and Origins were the two worst movies. Now it's like there's a trifecta. It's
Did
like for
you?
the antithesis of it all. Like for
I'm
example, just real quick, like you have Days of Future Past, Deadpool, and Logan. Those are like the three greatest movies. And at the other
Yeah.
end of the spectrum, you have Last Stand, Origins, and fucking Dark Phoenix. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's I don't like I remember after watching The Last Stand 2, boastfully saying it can't get worse than this. And it did. It did.
Really though, wasn't it all just the same kind of worse?
I
Like
guess it
Origins,
was
Last Stand. I mean, they're all bad.
no,
I mean, like I said,
because
that's still
I think like The Last Stand is just like producers like or like I think it's like bad producers, bad directors, bad casting choices.
okay.
Or
Okay.
so, whereas this is just all like this is like you did not try whatsoever. Because like at least with The Last Stand, it's just all like you have this moderately it's a mediocre script, but it's manageable, and then you get freaking what's his name, Brett Ratner to come in to direct it, and he puts his like stink of douche on everything, right? Just like
He did Batman, right?
he did Justice League.
Oh, Justice League. That's
He
what I'm
did
thinking of.
he was like one of the 5 directors to touch that movie. So it was like
Ugh.
Snyder, then Brett Ratner, and then they got Josh Whedon to touch up at the end.
But then it's like you got too many, heads on a Hydra. People still go on and be like, release the Snyder cut. And I'm like, is that really gonna be better? Is it Zack Snyder who's gonna be
It's not
the
gonna make it better.
last bastion of hope that's gonna save this movie? Like, damn, this Snyder cut is like fucking what is it like? Shawshank
Right.
Redemption. It's Shawshank Redemption now all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, no, you're just gonna get a couple more slow motion scenes. Let's be real.
Yeah, it's like, can we just, I don't know. We'd rather do, Rush Hour. Those movies are good. I like Rush Hour.
There you
I
go.
like that. I'm biased towards Jackie Chan. Those movies work, but that's it. That's it. He should have just stayed away. After he did X-Men, he should have got out of the hero business or the superhero business for being involved in films.
Or,
Just like just like Simon. Like these fuckers need to learn their lessons. Goddamn.
so what did we learn going through this decade? I feel like we learned that people like Simon Kinberg, like this is an example of someone that is a yes man and who failed upwards. Like this is like it's possible to fail up. This is an
Yep.
example
Ryan
right
Reynolds
here.
as well. Both of them.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds to some extent too. Yeah, he failed
Yeah.
upwards. Like
Yeah, his roles and character, like everyone was like, no, like don't portray Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool again. Like he already fucked that up. Like he's done. And even though he didn't really fuck that up, that role was still fucked up for him.
yeah,
Just like with Green Lantern. So it's like either one. If you would have been like, we're gonna do another one of these Ryan Reynolds, I'd have been like, no, like why? Like I don't want another Deadpool movie. We tried that in Origins, but then after I saw that little like test clip too, and I was like, okay, this looks cool. I want to watch this. Like this Deadpool feels like Deadpool. His voice sounds like now when I hear Deadpool in comics or when I'm reading Deadpool in comics and I like do the voice in my head, it's Ryan Reynolds.
yeah.
It really. That's why
Same here.
Detective Pikachu is weird. I'm just like, this is too strange.
Yeah.
This is too strange. But yeah, like that's just how that one goes. But overall, like I guess what could I say I learned from this decade? I learned that if you give a X-Men movie to be helmed by Bryan Singer, you will get something that is at least enjoyable. I learned that if you give an X-Men movie to Kinsberg by himself, it's not going to be that great. It's not going to be something enjoyable at all, probably. If anything, if he's got enough of a crew around him, it'll be something that's good at best, probably.
I guess you could say he's a good producer. I mean,
Yeah, but
he
even
may.
then, he was. If Singer's on board, then I don't think he's helming that production as heavy.
Well,
I
he
think it's
produced
more a Singer
Logan.
thing.
He produced Logan too, and he produced Deadpool.
Yeah, but I mean, didn't they have other people though, pretty heavily entrenched in that production core? Like
So
with Logan, wasn't there like didn't Mangold also produce and direct with Logan? I think.
Simon Kinberg did produce he did produce Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds also produced Deadpool.
Yeah, and Ryan
Uh,
Reynolds, I hear, made a lot of the big choices that stuck in the film. Like, and he's more closer to the character and like the portrayal. So I think that helped. I think they had like was it I think like Hutch Parker and like Lauren Donner. Those were like other producers that were on Logan. So I feel like
yeah,
you put
Lauren
him.
Schuler is a producer. The other one's an executive producer, which is just they gave money. Most
Well, look,
likely.
not to jump into the TV stuff, but he had a big hand in like Legion, and I love that show. And he had
Okay,
a
yeah,
hand in
yeah.
it, but it's like it's the crew that he works with, like the people. If you look at this, is my whole point and my argument that I was making during Dark Phoenix is that you put him writing, producing, and directing this film is fucked. You put him on anything else with a good enough crew, the film will be fine. Like I said, you put him a singer. If you put him a singer, it's fine. You're gonna get a good movie. Maybe not a great movie, but you'll get a good movie. No man, like even X1 is a good movie. X2 to me feels more like a great movie. Days of Future Past feels like a great movie.
Mhm.
Deadpool, great movie. He's got his hands in those, but he's not the one driving the ship.
Simon
He's like,
Kinberg was a producer on Logan, and Hutch Parker was also a producer on Logan.
yep,
James Mangold was an executive producer on Logan,
okay, and he directed it.
and he directed it.
To give James Mangold more, that's another thing I learned from this decade. James Mangold, give him
Give
more
him
X
more.
Men
He
movies.
seemed to.
Marvel,
He's
Marvel,
good. Yeah.
get on this.
MCU.
If you're making a Wolverine movie, get James Mangold.
Yeah, I think he could. You think he could play ball with like Disney?
Yeah, that's true. 'Cause he's gonna be like,
You got to be.
I'm gonna gritty western this, and Disney's gonna be like,
You're gonna stay on cue.
yeah.
Stay on target. Stay on target. And they're just all like, "That's Star Wars. That's a different property you own." It's like you get the picture, you know.
Still, in the end, and in my overall opinion, this was a good decade for X Men movies. The the previous decade only had like five X Men movies, and like more than half of them were terrible.
Yeah.
So there you go. This decade they did a lot better. That's what we learned. But then it's a new decade and a new world because Marvel will be making the X Men movies from this point forward. So we're in a new landscape. These are like comic arcs. We will be able to look at these movies as decade arcs.
You said
uh,
you said Days of Future Past, Logan, and Deadpool are your top
top
three.
three. Yep. What about you?
Rank those.
Ooh, all right, all right.
Because mine are also those three. So I
In
want to know.
ranking,
Yeah, rank those. And
um,
same as mine.
this is tough, but Deadpool 3 is 3 for sure. Deadpool's 3 for sure because it's a battle between Logan and Days of Future Past because those are kind of they close off this series. Like you could bookend the series at either one of those points,
Either
but
one of
it's
those
the
points,
same
yeah.
thing. Yeah, you know what? Uh, Days of Future Past because it had Kelsey Grammer's Beast cameo at the end, and he was the one like saving grace of, or not even a saving grace, but he's the one good part of Last Stand. That's the one thing from Last Stand they kept was Kelsey Grammer,
Kelsey
and
Grammer.
kudos to that movie for doing that. You kept Frasier, and I give it. You're my number one.
So Days of Future Past is your number one. Logan
Logan
number
and then
two.
Yep,
Deadpool is your number three. Sir,
correct.
we have the exact same opinion on X-Men movies. I guess that's why we're doing an X-Men podcast together.
There we go. We vibe, Kyle. Congrats. we both came out of 20 or the teens with the same opinion on X-Men. It affected us the same way.
Affected us the same way.
Deeply and confusingly. Because you're happy and you're filled with joy, and then things like freaking Dark Phoenix comes in at the end of the decade, and you're like, what happened? Like, what really happened here? Like, were these good movies? Did I had to question myself. I went back and I watched Logan, and I'm like, oh, it's such a good movie. It's good. What happened?
What happened, right?
This is the year right before this came out. Like, I don't understand.
I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Or
But
like right before this came in production, like Jesus. These people, none of these people ever talk to each other.
none of them
It's like
talk.
the government agencies, like how we were talking about, like the CIA and the FBI don't talk to each other. It's like none of these like production companies and Foxwood who are making these movies were talking to each other.
They sure weren't. They sure won't. Hopefully, we'll get better stuff now that it's going to be integrated into the MCU. And when that happens, we'll be sure to talk about it here because I'm excited for MCU X-Men. That's going to be fun.
I'm hesitant, but we'll see. Like I said, we've seen
Yeah.
some of the worst, so I'm already going into it with like, okay, at least it will maybe be better than that stuff, the Dark Phoenixes and Last Stands of the yesteryears. So it can't be that bad at least, but then it could, because the last probably 4 MCU movies I watched, I really did only like probably one of them. Like wholeheartedly, like was like this was a great movie. Like I had a lot of fun with this. And that was probably the Avengers one because that was the culmination, like Endgame, you know? Like that's okay, that was a good movie because at least it tied up. It had its dumb plots, but it was a good movie. The rest of the Avengers movies and or the Marvel related movies have come out this year. I'm just like, nope. I don't care. Don't care. Couldn't care less. Really don't even care about the Black Widow movie. I'm like, it looks kind of funny, but what? Why do I care? Isn't she dead?
Man, they
We
did.
prequeling? Are we prequeling movies
They're
now again?
prequeling.
Like
We're
that's what they
prequeling.
did Ant-Man, and that was like lackluster, and I'm like, okay.
Man, they did Taskmaster dirty. You see that like lackluster outfit, man? I can't. There's no
It's not as
soul.
bad as like I said, Kristen Wiig is in the Wonder Woman movie. That's worse.
Yeah, I hope that's just what she looks like, and they're gonna put CG on top of that. I really do, but we'll see.
Or to look worse.
Or
I
look
don't have hope for
worse.
it. The last DC movie was Aquaman, and yeah, there we go. So we'll end the X-Men movie franchise on Aquaman was a terrible movie, and that's what we have to take away.
That's the takeaway from this podcast.
Aquaman.
Aquaman. Not that good.
Garbage.
But any last words you have to say on these films? We were going to touch on TV, but I think maybe we'll touch on that a little bit later. We'll definitely get down
hard on this.
we definitely went hard. We're definitely going to touch on the comics throughout the decade, so we'll probably try that next. And you're going to be getting more Dawn of X coming up. I will be releasing all of House of X and Podcast of X by Christmas. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a Merry, Merry Krakoa Day to you.
And have a great Festivus.
And have a great Festivus, folks. And remember, the robots are going to kill you. But that'll do it for Podcast of X. Today, I am Danny. I'm with Kyle. We'll catch you next week. Wait. I did that backwards. I am not Danny.
No, leave it. That's it. That's perfect.
We're done.
Perfect. Cut and print.
And done. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, we are going back through our classic episodes and uploading them onto YouTube in what we are calling Podcast of X Classics. So be sure to be on the lookout for more classic episodes. And be sure to check out freespeechgeek.com.